Hello, everyone. My name is Taryn Matheru, and I am a New York Times bestselling author who is a huge fan of the show From. And I'm making this live today because I wanted to lock in my theory for what I think is going to happen on April Fools of 2025. And I'm making this video just so I can run through my theory on Reddit so that I'm locking it in and everyone can see what I was thinking on the 20th of March. And I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. It's, this is going to sound super crazy. It's going to sound like I have a serious case of apophenia. And it's the culmination of I don't know, quite a lot of hours of my time where I've just I've been trying to figure out what's going on in the world of From. So let me share my screen so that everyone can see. Let me see if I can make it work. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you can see that now. And I'm just going to run through it from start to finish, talking around each point a little bit as I go. And yeah, we'll see if any of this turns out to be right. I don't 100% know what's going on. It's very confusing. I oscillate between thinking that I've sort of gone off the deep end a little bit and I'm reading into things too much. And at other times I'm like, no, this has got to be correct to some degree. There's just too much data. There's too many coincidences. So I don't know. I'm making this video. It's all for fun. I may be, I'm at the risk of a bit of embarrassment if April 1st comes along and I'm totally wrong about everything. But I just wanted to make this video to lock it in. And if I'm right, wouldn't it be cool to rewatch it and see what I got right and what I got wrong? So, okay, here we go. So I genuinely believe if someone said, what percentage likelihood do you think this is real? That something's going to happen on April 1st that's From related in some way. I would put it at like 70% maybe. So I'm still 30% on I'm being pranked, or maybe not me being pranked, but like the showrunners have created a prank and I'm the only one who's gone deep enough down the rabbit hole to pick up on it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but this is my best attempt at explaining what I think is happening. But to be honest, almost every clue has like 3 different things it could be, and I've just sort of picked the one that I think is most likely. We'll see. But in any case, I've been writing this theory for a while, thinking about From a lot, and doing a lot of research, to be honest, into history, and sort of the clues on From that I think indicate how their world works and how the game that's taking place on From is played. And it's complicated, and I know I'm not correct on it. I know that I've got like a rough idea of what it looks like, but in terms of the categories and things like that, it's going to look a bit wrong. But anyway, let's see what happens. So first of all, I've been thinking about this theory. I posted a pretty intensive theory. I think it was 9 parts, about 18,000 words of theory that I'd sort of typed up over the year. And, I thought that season 3's ending was going to be very different to what we saw. So I remember when season 3's spoilers leaked, the pictures of Smiley being born. And I think there was something else. Oh yeah, and then there was also like a summary that leaked. I think that it was like someone said that their partner had received the episodes, they'd watched it, and then they'd posted a sort of very rough version on Reddit. And I genuinely thought, so I admit this, I genuinely thought that was a fake leak that the showrunners had put out there to mess with everyone. So then episode 10 came around and it was exactly what the spoilers said, basically. And I remember thinking, what on earth is going on here? I remember thinking, that I had to that a large swathe of my theory was quite wrong, and that I'm really bad at this, basically. And that my assessment of how good I was at predicting what was going to happen was pretty bad. So then I thought maybe there is an alt ending coming, and what will and I thought, because this is so random, but I thought that the egg in the spoilers looked a bit like a turkey, and Thanksgiving in America was coming up, and I thought maybe this is like there's going to be like a Thanksgiving special, because I think Thanksgiving is actually connected to the origin story of From. So I thought that, well, maybe they'd do something like that. But Thanksgiving came around, nothing happened. I thought, oh, okay, I'm so wrong. So at that point, I was like, okay, no, there's no alt ending. I'm just an idiot, basically. And okay, so I keep thinking that, and I sort of stopped trying to solve the show, to be honest, because I was like, I'm not very good at this. My theory is where it stands. Let's see if I get anything right later. So I kept thinking, kept going, and I did not like the ending. Sorry to say, and I'm gonna go through some of the reasons why I don't like the ending. I might as well go through that now. So, number one, the music clues. There's a series of numbers that were on the Render Move website that supposedly translated into music. But when there's so many musicians that are also trying to solve the show, and they're all like, "What is that?" A lot of them said the number of chords in the song did not equate to 12, for example. And interestingly, the actor Jade said that he literally improvised some of the numbers and some of the things when he was filming the sort of music realization scene and earlier scenes. And I was like, improvisation? That's quite odd. These guys have an enormous art department, one of the best in the world, probably the best in the world. And they're from what I can tell, From's the people behind From are the best at what they do. A lot of them. It's quite amazing that I feel like people in the TV industry are probably watching From, being like, this is incredible. It's got and sort of the rest of the public are sort of watching it, not really realizing just how much talent is behind the show, and thinking it's like a little sort of small budget sort of cult horror show, which it kind of is, but I think that's changing. So anyway, music clues didn't make sense. Ankui, meaning remember, didn't make sense. Could not be reverse engineered either. There's no word for remember in any language that means Ankui. So okay, maybe there's a complicated explanation where letters are moved around in different orders, or it means remember, but for weird reasons. Maybe it's an alien language, whatever. But it didn't make sense to me. And they knew that people would spend a great deal of time trying to figure out what Ankui meant, looking up languages and such. And I just, it's like, it means remember. Great. Why? So it wasn't much of a reveal, and the reveal didn't make sense. So again, I didn't love it. The other thing was, we've got Kenny preparing these Molotov cocktails, going to the caves. Everyone's excited for it. And then they yank that away from you. They tease this monster capture, everyone's excited for it. They yank it away from you. That is not good writing, in my view. You don't tease your audience with something that you don't pay off. Maybe next season, sure. But I feel like it just didn't ring right to me. Fine. The other thing is Julie and Ethan, if Jim really did die, Julie and Ethan are going to spend all of season 4 mourning again. We're going to have a whole nother, and sorry, but I think that's very one note, and not something people really want to see much more of, to be honest. I think the emo Julie and Ethan period is people done with it now. It's interesting to see, they think she's dead, she's not dead. I liked it, but I'm just saying, a whole nother season where they're now genuinely mourning, but now it's there for their dad. It's just, I don't know. I didn't love it. I don't think it's right. Next, it cost very little to do, and the actors, not just David Alpe, who plays Jade, but the guy who plays Elgin, he also said that they improvised some of the torture scenes, like the scene where Boyd sticks the screwdriver in the wood. It's like, it didn't even go in. He laughed about it. You know, it was an improvise. I just feel like, you know, for a show like From to improvise in it, like the secondary climax of the finale didn't make sense to me again. So fine. The other thing is, honestly, the last 3 episodes of From, there were so many just one-on-one conversations of the actors wandering around in the woods, and it's a lot of character building, what some people might call a lot of filler. I'm not saying I hated it. I'm just saying for the last 3 episodes of your show, there was a whole lot of not much going on, and frankly, the climaxes were so cheap to do. It looked amazing, convinced me for a great, you know, for a while. But I'm just saying, like, it, you know, effectively Smiley just needed fake blood and some sort of stretchy sort of fabric over him. And interestingly, they had a version where there were 2 other younger Smileys that they tried to film with, apparently, that no one seems to have noticed the actor mentioning that. But I thought it was really interesting that they did that. Not that I think it makes anything less or more likely, but I thought that was interesting. But, you know, and the torture scene, it was literally like some, you know, a bit of eye makeup and a bit of hand, you know, damaged hand. That's it. I mean, for a show like this, where it's supposed to be getting bigger and better and grander every season, I don't know. It didn't feel quite right to me. Just my opinion. Okay. Reincarnation is already very difficult to pull off. Reincarnation's hard because I think it often breaks the suspension of disbelief for the audience when they're seeing another actor playing, especially if they're in a completely different body that looks nothing like them. You know, a younger version is a bit more believable. But when it's like a reincarnated, completely different person from the past who lacks all the memories of that other person, because they're ahead of them in the timeline, or vice versa, it doesn't quite work. Especially if there's going to be time travel, which I'm pretty sure there will be. I'm sorry, there's just too much data. It's 100% happening. So, okay, in any case, my view is that it, especially for actors like David and Catalina, who are extremely distinctive actors, I mean, you know, you could not replace them. You know, if there was a show, you know, I remember, I think it was between Iron Man 1 and 2, they replaced War Machine's actor. I think that's what the superhero is called. Anyway, he's a War Machine. That they replaced the actor. You could never do that with David or Catalina. And you know, Catalina's accent, I think it's quite distinctive. And then what are we going to see? We're going to see a 300-year-old girl with a Cockney from 300 years ago, girl with a Cockney accent of a different age who doesn't know who Tabitha is, and we're supposed to think they're the same person. I think it's very messy, and I don't think it would work very well. And the other thing is, reincarnation and time travel combined is extremely messy. Very, very difficult to write, very difficult to film, very difficult to understand, in my opinion. And the other thing is, Julie's form of time travel, I just don't think it works for what my theory thinks is going to happen next. And I'm sorry, I know people are like, okay, well, that's just your theory. Who cares? There's so many historical figures referenced. I'm sorry. It's just 100% for me. There are so many historical figures referenced. That Julie's form of time travel, where she astral projects and seizes on the ground every time she meets one of these historical figures, it doesn't work. So unless she's got a really weird form of time travel and there's more of a normal corporeal form of time travel also there, but it's then maybe that works. But you know, genuine actors from this show will need to show up in that timeline and walk around and be there for days and days, in my mind. So anyway, so that form of time travel is really weird and messy. I didn't love it. And I don't think it's real, you know, or 70% of me says it doesn't. 30% of me says you have a very bad case of apophenia. So let's see. Okay. So I believe that the last 3 episodes of From season 3 are not the real conclusion, but part of an elaborate prank and publicity stunt. I think the ending we saw was fake. And I actually think it was written and directed by the actors with support from the showrunners and MGM Plus. So I think they helped. But I think the actors actually were deeply involved in the ending that we saw. What else? I think that and I think they probably partly directed it too. I get that feeling. Because I think because the show's mystery is something that I still think that they don't know fully what's going on. I think that they might know a lot more than we think. But I don't think that John Griffin's done the full presentation and explanation to them to show what's going to happen. Mostly because it would probably take about 3 or 4 hours to explain. Maybe, I mean, that's how long it took me, and I was rushing through it. Although I did talk around it a lot as well. So where was I? So I think that those 3 episodes are fake, and what we're actually going to see is a 3-hour special, perhaps including a double bill and extended episode, so maybe like an hour-and-a-half episode or something. And I think we'll get to binge it all at once as well. I think this is From's sort of way of letting the actors write and direct whilst still not knowing how it ends, basically, where they make up what they think is going to happen next, and that's what we saw. What else? Anyway, so why do I think it's April Fool's Day? You know, everyone's like, okay, great. Okay, you think it's not real. You know, you didn't like the ending. Fine. What about April Fool's Day? Well, let's look at this calendar, which is covered in clues, and they put very obvious clues in there. Like I think 18. I think that this fraction. Sorry, you can't really see it very well here, but that fraction over there, I think, ends up as 4.7 or something like that. If you calculate it, or 4.7, I can't remember exactly how it leads to 4 and 7. And then they've circled 30 here, which I know is a clue. The number 30, it's a clue to, well, I'm pretty sure it's a clue to Judas's 30 pieces of silver, which are like there's various objects from history that I think form part of the mythology of the show, and that's one like set. I think it probably gets melted down and turned into something at some point. It's very likely, actually, but I think that's what that is. And I think that, and actually, I think the pieces of silver were previously something else. I think they started as like a silver branch, if memory serves me, and then I suspect it gets melted down and turned into Judas's 30 pieces of silver, etc. Also interesting here, I'll just briefly mention 3 years and 4 months is the length of time between when John Cabot probably arrived in Newfoundland to when Gaspar Corte Real disappeared from Newfoundland. So I think that is the time period in which the events of From's origin story take place. And that's what I think 3 years and 4 months means. And I also think that's the length of the cycle. And I think that these cycles are triggered, not initiated, but the cycles happen around massacres. They're not triggered by a massacre, I don't think. I think it could start 2 years before the massacre or 2 years after the massacre, but it happens around massacres. So, for example, the 1864 one is the Fort Pillow massacre. Pretty sure the 1883 one is a Chinese miners massacre. You've got the Boston massacre for the 1776 timeline. I'm not sure what the 1930s one is. I don't think I ever tried to figure that out, actually. But in any case, it's massacres in my mind. But anyway, so here we have a question mark, right? And it's after March 31st. What comes after March 31st? April 1st. Okay, so that's probably not convincing you. That's fine. But what's also interesting is that, you know, in the finale, the room that Elgin was tortured in, it's not actually that exciting and that cinematic a room. It was a weird choice to film in my view. But what's interesting is the calendar here. It's prominently displayed in much of that scene. And they even, you know, you look at the screenshot, you know, they take the opportunity to put it front and center. And I find that really interesting because, you know, Jack Bender and the writers have acknowledged that From is filmed in a way where the center, like the two-thirds of the screen is dedicated to something else, actually, and the focus of the scene is on the side. I've butchered that and explained it terribly. Oh, I just figured out what the Butcher clue means. It's it's the actor who plays Butcher on The Boys. Anyway, we'll get into that later. Sorry, because John Griffin keeps saying that he's butchering words, and so do the actors in interviews. Again, we'll get onto that later. But anyway, so we've got the calendar very prominently displayed, and basically the reason why, I'm pretty sure, and I think most of you will agree actually, because it's very obvious that there are clues hidden in the background of the show. You know, this is very clearly positioning that positioning the calendar as the clue that you're supposed to look at in this scene. Why? Why when it's a clue to 7 and 4? Why when it's a clue to 30 pieces of silver? That has nothing to do with the finale. You know, the time period of the cycle, it's around the time that it's going to end. You know, I think Donna's been there 3 years and roughly 4 months, something like that. She even mentions the number of days, actually. So we could probably count down Actually, that's probably something that, look, I don't have time to do it, but I'm sure, I bet if you try to line those things up, and it's probably one of the reasons why John Griffin and Jack Bender have been so cagey when people have asked, how long have they been there? And so do the actors. They all say it's important that we don't tell you. And I think that's because we know that it's about 3 years and 4 months that the cycle lasts. So we know that the ending is coming soon. So if you calculate that, then you'd know that the cycle's about to end, basically. So anyway, how do I think they're going to do this? Oh, and also in their interviews, so I'm going to get into this later, but the actors, a lot of the clues about what's going to happen, in my mind, could be clues to season 4. I accept that. If I'm wrong about April Fools, then they're just clues to season 4. You know, that's entirely possible. But I believe the YouTube interviews provide a different set of clues to what the show presents you with. I think that the YouTube interview clues specifically point to what happens in this finale, which I also believe is actually going to be the series ending of From, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. But anyway, so how are they going to do this? Oh yeah, so in these interviews, to finish my point, they also mention the word April and the word fool as part of the sets of words that they repeat, which are clues on the show. And how do I think they're going to do this? I think that they might actually do it very quietly. And I'm pretty sure, by the way, that some of the the big blogs and stuff like comicbooks.com or comics.com, I think that they're in on this. I think they know what's coming, and I think they've been helping tease this. I found it really interesting that in the lead up to April 1st, so over the last week or so, you know, randomly, you know, in March of 2025, all these different articles are coming out mentioning that season 4 of From seems so far away, and what a shame that is, and how frustrating it is. You know, why are all these big, you know, major sort of news media outlets, sorry, not news outlets, media outlets that review TV shows and discuss sort of pop culture, why are they all having the same thoughts at the same time? I don't know. Something to think about. Okay. So why am I now more certain than I was before? Well, it comes from the actor interviews. You know, the actors, they have this thing where sometimes when they're dropping like really obvious clues, there's duper's delight in their expression. You can see that they're really like enjoying, you know, lying, tricking you, basically, or dropping these obvious clues that they imagine some people might go back and see later. So that's one thing that I've noticed. Fine, I could be reading into things. I get that. But I think that, you know, before season 3's release and after the release, and actually I've realized that they've been dropping these clues now since season 1, all the way from season 1, even before season 1 came out, all the way up to now, they're dropping the same sets of clues. The same keywords are being repeated all the way through. And they're all pointing towards what I think is the last 3 episodes. There's too much data for it to just be 1 episode. So, and that's why I think it's an entire 3. Also, things that happened in episode 8 seemed off to me. So I think it goes all the way back to episode 8. And I think that's why it's called Thresholds, by the way. And what I also found really interesting is that episodes 9 and 10 are called Revelations, but when Amazon released the photos, they were all labeled Reflections. And I think that's a clue to the name of what the real ending is going to be called. And also they released a bunch of promo photos where Julie was wearing different items of clothing in the scene where she's in the, what do we call it? The ruins, I think is what they're known as now. Okay, great, fine. So what else? So I only realized this. I swear it's actually frustrated me a little bit that I only realized this like maybe a month ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't know exactly when it hit. I could probably scroll up. I have a thread on Discord where I've basically been showing my working. So if anyone doesn't believe me, and you can go and see my working, see my mind being blown every time I think I've solved something, and probably being wrong about what I think I've solved. But you can see how I came to my conclusions quite often in that thread. So feel free to go on Discord. It's the From TV Epics Reddit channel's Discord. I'll drop it in the YouTube link. Yeah. So sorry. I have a deadline at the moment, and I'm working 3 different jobs at the moment, so I haven't had time to like prepare a speech or rehearse this or anything. So apologies for rambling a little bit. So one thing I did notice all the way through, and it was the only clue that I somehow noticed the whole time, was that they were dropping references to explosions all the time. Okay, it's actually been from season 1 onwards, but all the way up to season 3, it really started the explosion references. And yet there was not a single explosion in season 3 at all, despite them constantly referencing things like off with a bang, explosive. God, you know what? Let me access my spreadsheet and I'll read some verbatim quotes just from Boyd alone. Although to be fair, I stopped. When I've written it down once or twice, it comes up so often, the word explosive, that like I'm not going to have that many variations. But anyway, let's see what kind of stuff does he say. He says, "Blew my head up, brain is exploding." What else? Yeah, I really didn't write these down because I knew that was a clue, so I stopped writing them. Maybe this is a bad example, but anyway, if you do decide to go back and watch, there's a few clues like big. The word big comes up a lot. Clue to Bigfoot, in my opinion, and also Tom Hanks is big, believe it or not. But it's explosive. Look for references to explosives and blowing me away and blew my head off and blew me back, and it just went off with a bang, and boom, stuff like that. When you're looking for it, you can see it. I wasn't, because I'd often listen to the interviews sort of cooking or making a meal or something like that, eating a meal, so I wouldn't really be paying attention. I probably believe a whole bunch of rubbish about the actors that is probably not true, because they tell these stories that are so far-fetched and they're full of clues, and I'm like, they just made this story up to dump as many clues as they can in, and I'm still not sure. It seems to me, and I know this sounds crazy, but it seems to me that virtually every interview is scripted. I can't express enough how many clues the showrunners have left in both the dialogue of the show, because a lot of the stuff that they've hinted at on the show as well has not materialized. And in the interviews themselves, they have not materialized. None of these clues. And what I found now, I don't know exactly how it works, but it seems to me that the interviews are almost entirely scripted. So the people asking the questions are giving the questions ahead of time, and the actors, you'll literally see them sometimes looking at their script. They're pretty good at it, to be honest. You really have to watch a lot. I think Harold, when he started, very busy man. I think one of the first ones he did around season 3, he had, like, you could see that he was referencing his notes midway through. That's my opinion. But maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm reading into things, but that looked like how it was. But they often look to the side to look for things. Maybe they have a list of keywords that they're dropping in, and they're just really, really good at dropping them in, and it's not scripted. But I promise you, the actors use words like really a lot. Oh my God, they use real and really so much. Truth, more. They throw more out a lot. What else? Let me have a little skim through my look through my clue lists. Growth. They're constantly talking about growth. Things like cracking open, breaking open. Hope. They use hope a lot, all the time. You'll see them making like pyramid shapes with their hands sometimes, sort of like it's very subtle, but you'll see them do like that or that. And the word monument or monumental comes up a lot as well. Anyway, that's enough examples. I'll probably try and show you my spreadsheet at some point, but let me get through this first. So anyway, if it's not scripted, then the actors are improvising. They must improvise for some of it. Like, I'm sure not. I'm sure often they'll get through the script and then they'll keep going with other things and they'll drop a few hints here and there. But anyway, so here's another really interesting thing. What I realized about a month ago, maybe. No, I think I realized that there were clues in the YouTube interviews, a lot more clues, maybe a month and a half ago or something like that. But I only realized what basically all the clues were representing, like a huge chunk of them, because the clues rhyme, believe it or not. I figured that out like 3 weeks ago, and my mind has been blown constantly since, because basically these clues point to Amazon's biggest stars. And also actors that Midnight Radio have worked with in the past, like The Rock, for example, and like the cast of Jumanji. Even the Russo brothers, people they've worked with. And I know they're involved in the creation of From. Like, people don't know this, but the Russo brothers, really helped make it happen, apparently. What else? Yeah, and Amazon have clearly leaned in, and the cast of Invincible and The Walking Dead are being referenced. Anyway, I'll get to my list later, but it's just amazing how many actors are being referenced, and I don't know what it means yet, to be honest. I'll tell you what I think it might mean, but I haven't. It's a real shot in the dark. Okay, so I'm now going to run through my predictions for what I think is going to happen in the real ending. You'll notice it's quite similar to what I posted long ago. Well, on the day that season 3, episode 1 came out, I posted in the morning. And so you'll see that there's some similarities, but actually the YouTube clues are. It's interesting. It seems like my predictions before. My predictions that I made before season 3 came out did not benefit from the YouTube clues, which are mainly geared towards the series finale, in my opinion. So the predictions I made are actually without the clues that directly tell you. So I was surprised at how similar this theory with the benefit of those clues is to the old one, but you'll see that there's some major differences. And I'm more certain about certain things than I was. But this is what I think is going to happen. So first, I think Tilly's murder will get like an accusations thrown out. I think Sarah is actually going to be put in the box potentially, hunted down by angry people. Maybe they'll make lists of who it could be, and Sarah's going to be on the list. I don't know. So the problem is, I wrote this before. Well, anyway, look, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's wrong. Like, I'm connecting lists here to the accusations, but the lists might be a clue to something completely different. So, this is my best guess. I've sort of tried to put it together, but some of his stuff is just going to be like, why does he think that? It's because of keywords and like, how would I describe it? Deduction, basically. Like, if that's true, then that must mean this is true, and that means that clue must connect to it. So it'll be like it's more like a holistic thing. But anyway, so let me keep going. So let's see. Jasper, the ventriloquist doll. Another reason, actually, why I thought season 1 was fake is that we have a ventriloquist doll that we don't even hear speak. That is weird. Okay, that is an opportunity missed. Super strange. So I think he's there to be creepy, and yet he's all he's done is open his mouth and go "Rrr" a few times. I think there's a lot more to Jasper, and I think we're going to see that. And I think Ethan's going to speak with the boy in white as well. He's never spoken with him before, I'm pretty sure. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing. Ethan, often the actors in their interviews will theorize about things or say things that they wish would happen, or wish had happened. And I think it's a nod. It's not always, but I think sometimes it's a nod to what is actually going to happen. Maybe, if I'm right about this. Bridge. I think there will be a bridge discovered. Now, why do I think there's a bridge? I think that there is a bridge in Fromland, and I think there is a tomb in Fromland. Why do I think this? I think this because the American side of Fromland, because I think there's a Canadian side on the underneath part. I think it's like a weirdly shaped world. More on that later. But basically, I think the American side, if you've seen that, that game that's in the background, it's sort of shaped like an octagon. It's got like multiple board games on each side, and you can like flip it. I believe that From is basically a sort of metaphorical representation, sort of a curse that turned a board game, double-sided board game table with like tarot cards and like toys and game pieces and things on it. I think that was part of like a curse, a sort of challenge and a game between a boogeyman and a cunning folk witch. And I think that created the curse of Fromland. And anyway, the long story short of it is the world of From, the part of From that we're looking at, is the game of Goose. And the different places, the different hazards in the game of Goose, which is a medieval board game. It's like a racing game, kind of like, oh, I can't even think of what the equivalent is because I'm not actually that big of a board game person. Anyway, it's a racing game where you need to get to the end, but you roll your dice or whatever, and then you move. If you land on a hazard, you go to jail, or something bad, you go back 7, or you get trapped there, whatever. But I have never played the game. But the point is that there's these hazards, I don't have them written down in front of me, but anyway, one is a tomb and one is a bridge. Then there's the hotel or the inn. I think that's the entire town. That's why there's a hotel sign, but no hotel. I think that's what they're trying to tell us. What else? And yeah, there's death as well. There's like a death place. And there's a tower, right? Like the lighthouse. Or is there a tower? I can't remember. But anyway, the point is, it's also like the game. There's also the game of Pachisi in there as well. I can't remember quite how it works now. It's been a while since I've thought about that side of things. But the point is that I'm expecting a bridge and I'm expecting a tomb. I think the tomb is going to be a genuine pyramid, and I think that there's going to be a world of the dead. But I think there's also going to be they use the word cliff a lot in clues. They're constantly throwing the word cliff out as a clue. So I think there's going to be some sort of, and they're also dropping like motorcycle hints and like motorcycle jumping hints. And so I think that there's going to be like a cliff. They're going to see like a gap, and there's going to be something interesting on the other side of the gap that they want to get to. And I think they're going to realize the only way to get to it is to jump a motorcycle over it. So I think Jade and Jim are going to build a like souped up motorcycle. Like, again, you have to listen to the interviews and you'll see them. It's so weird. They'll like, Boyd will talk about how he loves driving motorcycles because he's because he was on Sons of Anarchy. But I haven't read anything about that on the internet. And anyway, someone I think needs to jump the bridge, and I think it's going to be at 68 miles per hour. And I think that's what the 68 miles per hour clues mean on the board. It's also a clue, I think, to something related to Alice in Wonderland and how Lewis Carroll used words in the story, the words red and white, an equal amount of times in the story, like 200 times or 242 times or something, a specific number. And it's very similar to what Fromm does. So I think that might also, 68 times, sorry. So it'd be 68 times he used red, 68 times he used white. So I think that might have something to do with it, but I'm not 100%. Anyway, fine. So I think that why are they jumping? I think it's because there's like something on the other side. It could be a mountain, could be that pyramid. I don't know. Could be another lighthouse, like another tower. And I think that if they do manage to make this radio call, it's obviously something high, right? So something that they say, oh, we can climb that and send out a radio signal. Let's try it again. I think that either a Canadian person answers, like with a Canadian accent, or they hear the Titanic distress call. Okay. What else? Prepping a bomb. So, okay. This is going to sound super far-fetched, but Boyd mentioned Sputnik. I think they used the word satellite a couple of times. And there's references to nuclear bombs and atomic things. There's also the word pressure used all the time, so often. And I'm like, how on earth does a nuclear bomb end up in Fromland? And, you know, actually what's interesting is my Contender series, which is very similar to Fromm, we actually use a lot of the same historical figures and historical characters, if my predictions are correct. You can see it here, copy. I'm losing my train of thought. I also have they're called broken arrows. You would be shocked at how many nuclear bombs have gone missing over time. So I contrived to have a nuclear bomb in my book, but I don't think it's actually one of those because it's all connected to Newfoundland. And what's interesting about Newfoundland is, you know, I realized that this plane, oh God, it's gonna be so hard to explain all this. Maybe I should just make predictions and not say anything. The long story short of it is this whole story is based around Newfoundland. And I think that famous disappearances, things that went missing in and around Newfoundland end up in Fromland. So I think that basically, if they talk about Jade's revenge sometimes in the interviews. So I think what's going to happen is Jade's going to build a nuclear bomb using steam pressure. So I think there's a famous Russian satellite that disappeared, or it broke up over Canada, but no one ever found the main part of it. Maybe all the breakup was it, but they never found one big chunk of it, just pieces. And I think so. I think the reactor of the Cosmos 954 satellite that had a nuclear reactor inside. I think that he creates a bomb using water because I figured out that what's inside that nuclear reactor, it can basically create an explosion if it interacts with water too quickly. So I think it's something to do, it can like superheat, and then the heat will hit the water so quickly that the water will instantly turn to steam and expand, and it creates this enormous explosion. They also use the word mushroom and cloud a lot. So there you go. Also, I'm pretty sure about this plane that disappeared around Newfoundland in 1990. It actually had a crew of Peruvians. And I think I know that there's a boat that they use on this show. So I'm connecting, and they also use the word balloon and expand and things like that. So I think that there's a they use the inflatable life rafts from so because this plane, when it disappeared, it landed in the ocean. We know, like, they researched it and they know that there were like big inflatable life rafts on that plane. So I think that they take those life rafts and they use them when there's a flood, which I'll get onto later. So I think Fatima is going to get kidnapped, but I don't think it's going to be Elgin. Because episode 8, or it could be him. Maybe he's trying to help. I can't actually predict that. But Elgin is not bad. Okay, in my opinion, he's not bad. I may be wrong, but I think he's not bad in reality. And I think that what we're going to see is that Fatima's taken underground into the caves, and there's probably a frozen lake down there of some kind. I think when Fatima goes missing, instead of torturing Elgin, Boyd's actually going to capture a monster using the defibrillation paddles, because they use the word shocking and electrifying so often. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to lure a monster into the basement of the church, probably, and then they're going to, I think they're going to make all the floor wet, and Boyd's probably going to be standing on something rubber or a chair, or I don't know how they'll do it, but he's going to take them. Maybe it's not water. To be honest, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think electric shock is what's going to capture a monster. They're going to try it, see if it works. Maybe it's probably the water that gives them the distance to try. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I think they torture it in the basement, and they learn of her location by torturing it somehow. So then I think there's going to be a solar storm or an eclipse. This might happen later, to be honest. I'm not sure why I have it here. But I think that the sun's going to get extremely bright. They use the word bright and light and shining and blinding and things like that all the time. So I think we're going to have, I think there's an eclipse in 1978 potentially, but I think in modern day Fromland, there may be the opposite. There may be the sun becomes too bright and it's like a solar storm. And like to go outside, they need to cover their eyes and like all walk in a chain. Maybe that's sort of the vibe I was getting from some of the things they were saying. Again, a lot of this is like just like reading what these stories that these actors are telling and trying and glean it. So I couldn't even tell you where this came from really, but I'm getting that sense. It may be that there's an eclipse at the same time, something like that. I don't know. But certainly the same thing happened in 1978 in the last cycle. But maybe the 1978, maybe there's a massacre that happened in 1978. Maybe it's like Waco or something. I haven't looked it up. Again, I should have looked up these massacres, but if you find the pattern, you've solved it, right? So you don't need to find the exact detail. So yeah, Colony House under siege. I'm pretty sure that Colony House is going to be set on fire. I think Donna's going to shut down Colony House. It's going to be sieged, and she's going to defend it, and then she's going to die in a blaze of glory, probably. And we may see the true form of the monsters without their glamour, and it may be quite cute looking, because they use the word cute over and over again, but it may be a clue to something else. I don't know, but the word cute is thrown out all the time. The battle. So several of Fromley, definitely Ellis, I think, and Boyd and Kenny, I think they're going to gear up with baseball equipment, and they're going to go right into the caves with the Molotov cocktails. I think there's going to be mines down there, pickaxes maybe, and there's going to be spider eggs that they're going to burn somehow. So, but there's definitely some sort of Molotov cocktail fighting. Maybe it's not in the caves, because I'm pretty sure they burn spider eggs. One of the actors left a clue that made me quite certain of that one, actually. But I think they're going to gear up. And also, they're constantly talking about balls and people dropping balls and things. So something gets thrown to someone at some point, but I don't know what it is. It's too vague. So Elgin and Fatima. So I think Fatima will give birth in the dark. I'm going to change this when I go back, because I definitely want to include this. I think that in the alternate ending, we see her gut being sucked in, right? And you see all her ribs and everything, right? I think the opposite is going to happen here. I think her belly is going to expand grotesquely, and they're going to have to do a cesarean section. And I think that what comes out will be a shape-changing changeling, basically like a sort of inky-looking baby or a demonic-looking baby of some kind that can shapeshift. And I think that either this changeling will go back in time and swap itself with Thomas, and that's what died instead, because that's what changelings do. They're basically like a temporary baby that then sickens and dies, that's swapped with a real baby so that the fairies can steal them. So I think that's what's happened to Thomas, and I think Thomas is Jade, and I'll get into that later. Because this Thomas time travels, basically. They take him back in time, raise him till he's about 8 in, I think, 1978 probably, and then he goes back to the real world with no memories and becomes Jade. But I'll get into that later. So I think, yeah, the boogeyman will raise Thomas in another timeline after this happens. And anyway, the point is that I think Fatima's belly is going to expand massively. Her middle name is Rostami. The legend of Rostam, and the word Rostamzad is the Persian word for, or Iranian word for, cesarean. So we'll see about that. But I think it will expand. And the story of Rostam is that his mother, her belly grew so big that they had to cut him out. And I think that's something similar, sort of a chest burster type alien scene is going to happen here. All right. Tabitha will remember she is Eloise. Jade will remember he is Thomas at some point. I don't know when, or maybe they'll just learn about it through context and whatever, but they will learn this. Tabitha is Eloise in my mind. Jade is Thomas. And the way Jade is Thomas is this changeling got swapped. He got raised in another timeline, then returned to the real world. And he's actually raised by Tabitha pretending to be his grandmother, which I'll get into later. And I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I think is going on. Tabitha tells this whole story about how she doesn't like to go out with any of the other cast because she's really old. And she goes on and on about how old she is and how old she's feeling. And it's weird how old she is. And so I was like, oh my God, she's the grandma. Wow. Anyway. So what's going to happen? This is what you're supposed to. This is like the most complex part of solving the show. This is what like a lot of the clues sort of all marry together. There's like lists of 7, basically like sets of 7 things, 7 musical instruments, probably 7 types of drug, 7 types of fluid, like a bodily fluid, 7 types of jewel, possibly, or 7 types of food. 7 types of fruit. I don't know 100%, but that's sort of what I think is going on. So anyway, so people will get possessed, basically. They'll be possessed by these invisible spirits that have been haunting the town. They're the ones who have been watching, interacting. They're the voices. They're the ones knocking. They're the ones whispering. And one of them is who threw the rope in reality. Because you've got to picture that everything from when Fatima stabs Tilly at the end of episode 7 is not real. In my mind, that's what I think. I know I sound crazy. It's hard to put yourself out there. I'm reading through a Reddit post right now. I've posted in some of the Reddit groups, it's not, everyone just thinks I'm on drugs or I'm crazy, and so it's kind of embarrassing to be posting this stuff, to be honest, especially when the season finale came around and so much was wrong. So yeah, I realize I sound like a crazy person, but that is what I think the clues are referencing. So I think that there's these 7 ghosts. I think they sort of turn psychopathic, and I think they basically act like they're an angel who's just got their body back, right? So they're going to be doing drugs, like stuffing their faces, probably stuff like that, and then eventually they're going to capture 7 other people, and they're going to bring them to that stone circle where Katri meditates. And it may be that some of them. I guess it would be maybe it's all of them, or maybe it's just I don't know. I don't know, but they're going to be, maybe that's the cicadas like burrow into their brain somehow. I don't know. Something burrows into someone's brain. I don't know what it is. I'm guessing it could be cicadas. And certainly there will be dancing from these actors. Randall will absolutely dance. Marielle will 100% dance. I think Julie probably will dance as well. If you look on her like agent page or something, you can see that on her list of skills there's like 3 different types of dance that she does, one of which is like it's not interpretive, but I remember my impression being that it was something similar to interpretive dance. I don't know. Okay, so Drugs will be involved. I think they're basically these monsters, these people who have been possessed. After they capture these 7 others, maybe they drug them, maybe they knock them out, maybe they threaten them with a weapon. I don't know exactly. And I don't even know if the stones will be above ground or they'll somehow be the stones beneath the ground or whatever. But anyway, there's going to be some sort of ritual where they consume drugs, mushrooms, coffee, tobacco, cannabis, morphine, all the stuff, those antipsychotic pills that Ellis had maybe. And they're all going to be wearing different colors. It's going to be like the colors of the rainbow. You can see them here. Okay, these are all the colors I think that we're going to see. And their clothing may unravel and fray as the ritual unfolds. So they might all be naked. And then the threads might knit together into like a rainbow bridge or a rainbow blanket or a tapestry or something. And there's going to be various jewels and objects involved. I don't know if they're going to be like stuff that they're betting with each other with or what. But there's going to be substances, like I said, like salt, pepper, honey, oats, fruits, and berries. And I think ultimately what they're going to do is they're going to make some sort of potion with these liquids and things that they're adding in, and then they're going to drink it. So I think the possessed in turn intend to harvest organs from their sacrifices, basically. So look, this is going to sound super weird, but here's how I think it works, okay? I think that every being, so there's 7 former humans and 4 former angels, all trapped in Fromland. And these angels and humans have been playing a game for centuries in the real world. And now that they're trapped in Fromland, they're playing like a version of it here. And they love playing games, these guys. And basically, you can see what their origin here is. So these are the biblical and historical figures that they began as. And you can see the archetype here that are used to keep them straight, because they actually have different names in different timelines. But you can watch my whole 4-hour explanation on if you want to learn more about that. But ultimately, each of them has a color that represents them as a player. They each have a character that they're sort of possessing or influencing. And they each have a character that they're filling with the emotion that's most valuable to them. So that they're powered by, basically. So in this world, some are powered by guilt, some are powered by anger, some are powered by pain, some are powered by joy, patience, sadness, worry, stress, fear, courage, anxiety, and then love, hate, hope, and fun. I don't know. The problem is that some of the clues that they've left are different, are emotion. Like this is wrong. Okay, like I'm probably like 60% on this in terms of what emotions are, maybe 70%. And I don't know if these Americans, Canadians, ghosts, and fairies have their own emotional stuff. It's sort of, there was just too many emotions being referenced. But you will notice if you watch these interviews, oh my God, they mentioned the word emotional. It's all through emotion. It's all filtered through emotion. The emotions were building. They throw the word emotions and feelings out in really awkward and forced ways. So it's definitely the emotions that people are feeling. That's why Boyd never gets killed. He's being filled with pain, basically, and they're going to harvest him in this sacrificial ritual. Same with Ellis. Ellis is filled with anger. Victor's filled with survivor's guilt. Henry's full of joy now. Or maybe it's Donna who's full of joy. I don't know, but either Henry's full of joy because he finally sees Victor again, and that's why they brought him back to fill him with joy, only to harvest that joy, maybe. I don't know. And then there's patience, I think. Sadness for sure. It might be grief and depression. See, this is a problem. They use the clue sad. They throw out grief a lot, and they throw out depressed a lot. So I'm like, are they all the same? Are they not? So it could be that one's grief and one's depression, and they've differentiated between the two. But in any case, Kenny is definitely sadness. Jim may be worry, or Elgin may be worry. So again, I said I'm not sure about these. I don't even know if stress. They use the word stress all the time as a clue, but it could be a clue to something else. So, I've guessed stress, but it could be jealousy. Fear is definitely one. Courage is definitely one. Anxiety is probably one. Love, hate, hope, and fun are quite likely. So I think the monsters are powered by fun. And they started as the people of Gomorrah, basically. And then they evolved into different sort of like sets of categories of being in different timelines from different mythologies. And currently they're Newfoundland fairies, like modern day Newfoundland fairy interpretation in my mind. Okay. So anyway, so what are these monsters going to do? Well, they're going to act. It's going to be. So I think we're going to be presented with one of the most beautiful scenes ever, where they play music, they sing, they dance, you know, and then it's probably going to be one of the most disgusting scenes ever on television. I believe that, and this is where it gets tricky. The sequence of events here, I'm not sure. I'm probably going to be wrong about this, but the way I picture it based on the clues, but it might be in a different order, or you know, it won't be exactly right. But I think what happens is we're literally going to see the humans, like we're going to see Fatima cutting open Ellis and removing his lungs, and then squeezing them to remove the liquids, like wringing them out into their potions and then drinking them, or they might wring them out and they might even just eat them. I'm not entirely sure, but they'll squeeze. They might squeeze them and then eat them. I don't know. But effectively, when they eat these organs or these bodily fluids, animals will burst out of them. So each of them has a different sort of familiar or avatar, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. So you can see that here: owl, jellyfish. So Victor's is definitely an owl. I don't know whose is the jellyfish, but I'm pretty certain one's a jellyfish. One's definitely a bull. Pig, quite likely. Sheep, quite likely. Fox, maybe, probably not. Bear, 100% in my mind. Snake, 100%. Dog, 100%. Chicken, maybe. Goat, 100% in my mind. Okay, there's going to be a set of animals. I don't quite know how they work, but I think they burst out of the bodies somehow, and then they evolve. They use the word evolve so often, and grow. And they basically, I think, relative to the amount of bodily fluid that they consume, they will grow into a bigger and bigger monster. And you'll see the types of monster that I think they'll be here. Now, unfortunately, I've hedged my bets. I'm sorry. The clues confused me. Maybe I should have been more definitive, but I wanted to have an opportunity to get it all right. So there's a couple where I've given myself a bit of leeway here. Because it seems to me that currently they're in the form of modern Newfoundland monsters, European-based, not Native American indigenous-based mythology, but modern-day European, Newfoundland, and Northeast Canadian, actually all of Canadian mythology. And I think the one's going to be like this owl thing called Gaianway, or it could be Cressy, the sea serpent from Newfoundland's lakes, kind of like the Loch Ness monster. I think that there'll be a giant squid in the water. We're going to get Bonhomme Setters, who's like a French-Canadian sandman. He like wears a hat. He has a bag full of sand. He steals the souls of children. He throws sand in people's eyes, so maybe his eyes will be all whited out or something like that. He may be connected to flies somehow, but I'm not 100%. And he's going to be he's going to love to play games, basically. And he might be concerned with time. Quite seven, you know, Bonhomme Setters means the good man of 7 o'clock. Oh, and he definitely cracks bones, because Bonhomme Setters is also known as the bone cracker. So anyway, so that's one. There'll be a giant spider. I think there'll be a banshee of some kind. I think there'll be the Grim Reaper. And then this next one, I'm not sure. It's one of them is definitely a polar bear in some way, but I don't know if it's a monster that can transform into a wolf, a dog, and a polar bear at the same time or not. But so I don't know. But it's either Loup-Garou, which can turn into any of them, or Loup-Garou is one of, you know, I don't know, but it's a giant, one of them's a giant polar bear, basically. One of them's a snake. Again, I don't know if a sea serpent and a snake are the same thing, so I've hedged my bets here. Then there's the like werewolf one, maybe. They use the word dire a lot, although that might be a clue to the Game of Thrones cast. So again, it's hard to judge. One of them, I am certain, is Bigfoot, and one of them I think is the hag, and I think that might be Tilly. And I think Tilly, unless Tilly's been possessed, in which case, that's why I've been getting it wrong. So I've run out of people to put on these question marks, and now I realize that Tilly probably belongs in this question mark, and the hag is something different, maybe. So in this case, it would be Tilly that's possessed and Sarah the sacrifice. Anyway, you know, I'm never going to get 100% right, but you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So what happens then? There's going to be this giant battle royale between monsters. But we'll get onto that later, right? So John Griffin, he makes much of the fact that From is a fable in his latest interview. And what is a fable? A story where animals, legendary plants, inanimate objects, or forces of nature are anthropomorphized. I think we're going to see a lot of that. So anyway, so imagine this ritual's about to happen. Boyd's going to be sacrificed, Jade's going to be sacrificed. I think Boyd's going to come up with a plan, and I think he's going to trick the boogeyman. And I know this is going to sound totally crazy. I really know it does. But when Boyd was dropping these clues, that I was like, how can he shoot himself in the head and explode and get really drunk and throw up? What? How does that work? So anyway, this is my answer. So I think that Boyd, knowing that this guy likes to play games, he says, "You want to play a game? I challenge you to a drink off, truth or dare, and Russian roulette." I think those are the games that maybe each of the 7 gets a chance to play a game with him. Potentially, I don't know how it's going to work, but I don't know. Anyway, look, he likes to play with his food. Certainly a game of truth or dare. And I think ultimately what's going to happen is one of them's going to pretend to be unconscious, maybe after the drinking game. And I think that in the other case, I think Boyd will challenge the boogeyman to a game of Russian roulette. But I think he's going to trick him secretly, because either Jade's belly is going to be full of alcohol or his own belly is going to be full of alcohol. Someone's going to get punched in the belly. Fatima mentions gut punch. The actress who plays Fatima mentions gut punch all the time, and so do some of the other actors. So I think what's going to happen is, imagine this: they're sitting they're playing Russian roulette. Okay, there's a gun on the table. Jade is passed out, totally drunk. He's completely drunk, a whole Molotov cocktail, pure alcohol thing, right? And he's lost the drinking game, whatever, something like that. I think what's going to happen is Boyd is going to douse himself in alcohol somehow. Maybe he did it earlier. And then he knows he's going to lose the game of Russian roulette. So I think, look, I know it sounds crazy, but I think what he's going to do is he's either going to punch himself or Jade in the stomach. The vomit's going to go all over the boogeyman, and then Boyd's going to shoot himself in the head to set himself and everyone on fire, and blow it. And so that's how he fights the boogeyman. Basically, he kills himself to defeat the boogeyman. That's how I think it ends. I think Boyd is going to kill himself to save everyone else in a game of Russian roulette, in order to set a fire off somehow, or set off an explosion, or delay an explosion, something like that. But I think he shoots himself in the head and blows his head off, to be honest. So anyway, so these essentially what's been happening is the 7 spirits have been competing to fill the humans with different emotions, letting them stay alive to gather more, then harvesting. I've got some typos there. Harvesting the bodily fluids in the organs, which ultimately power their transformations into the moderns of modern Northeast Canadian, or probably all of Canadian mythology, which is in this timeline. And I think that also these liquids, they're giving them the power to do these cataclysms. So I think we're going to see rainstorms, hailstorms, windstorms, freezes, solar storms, tidal waves, floods, quicksand, earthquakes, eclipses, and more. So a CGI fest, basically. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy. That's a huge budget. What are you talking about? This is what I can't help what the clues are suggesting. They're dropping all these words that I think you cannot interpret them any other way, potentially. So maybe they're clues to some other things. Maybe all these clues, I put them together, and they're actually exclusively clues to a whole list of celebrities instead. And this is all just misinterpretation. I don't know. But that potentially, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think I think the dragon or the owl or someone may be able to freeze people like Medusa, maybe turning them to stone. Again, it's like me maybe misreading or reading correctly, an actor sort of weirdly telling me a story that sounds like they're hinting at that. So yeah, there'll be a massive battle royale where a polar bear and potentially the boogeyman and the dragon win. Maybe they're in like a 3-way alliance. So maybe the 3 that have got Marielle and Julie and Randall, maybe those 3 are in an alliance or something. They win every time. And I think that they're making bets and they distribute their winnings and things, probably with these jewels that I mentioned. And Tilly may fly around on a broom, who knows? Or maybe it's not Tilly, maybe it's the hag. Now I realize why I was always missing one. I was like, there's literally no more characters left. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I think there's going to be a mole, and I think it's actually going to be a Canadian mole. So I think we're going to learn that Clara is secretly Canadian. And I think that alternatively, she's like Sarah and she's sort of been tricked or tempted. But either way, she definitely tampers with Romilly's plans. Maybe she sabotages the bike or something like that. So I think Jade may actually change his mind and try and disarm the bomb and then forget his iPhone password or run out of battery or something like that. And I think that that in the story that we see at the start, where Julie talks with the finger puppets, where someone's dying from their injuries and they're saying, Tell my parents I love them. Tell my friends I said goodbye. And I think what we're seeing here is Jade telling Ethan, or if not, Julie or Victor, has to be one of the Matthews family, which all of these people are, to tell his parents that he's now learned are Jim and Tabitha, because he's learned that he's actually Thomas, potentially, that he loves them. So now he knows that they're his parents. He says, tell my parents that I love them, because he's never told them that before. And to tell his friends, of which he didn't have many before, now he does, goodbye. Maybe his friends are his siblings. I don't know. But maybe they're going to recreate that scene where basically Jade stays behind to try and disarm the bomb, set off the bomb manually, something like that. The iPhone runs out of battery, or something happens and someone has to do it manually. So he's injured anyway. So he's like, go on ahead without me. That's sort of how I see it. I think the secret fairies are the monsters closing in. So Jade's waiting, and then he's going to set off the bomb when Ethan gets out of range, or whoever it might be. And maybe that Ethan flips a switch. Maybe they need to do something simultaneously at the same time or something, because they talk about flipping a switch and pressing a button a lot. And I think it destroys blows up the monsters and buries them all, something like that. I think that Victor's going to return to the modern day real world for a red door in the air. Come on, everyone wants to see that, and it would be pretty cool. I think that it'll be like a portal in the air or a window in the air if it's not a red door. I think there'll be time travel through the bottles tree. I think the numbers do represent dates. And I think in the chaos, some of the characters will get on a life raft, when the flood happens. And I think that Jade may solve the puzzle using the 17th Fibonacci number or the golden ratio in some way. And I think it's going to be related to time and space, like triangulation or something. So I think maybe he's going to say, look, I can choose the place, but not the time. So we're not going to end up in a pool, but we got to go because the monsters are coming, or the flood's coming, or a wave is coming, or an earthquake is happening. I don't know, but they're going to go through the tree. And I think some of them will hold hands, some of them won't. It depends on what's happening. And I think that we're going to see the end of the show, and we're going to see spin-off shows with up to 7 timelines. Are we going to get 7 spin-offs? I doubt it. I think we might get 1 or 2. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be the 1880s timeline and the 1860s timeline, and potentially the 1930s timeline, but I'm not 100% on it. And it may be that actually it's just one spin-off show with all the timelines in it. But either way, there's going to be some sort of time travel spin-off. This is the end of From, and now it's going to be from 1880, 1864, or From Time Bandits or something. I don't know. But I think there's going to be some, I think it's actually the end. I think these 3 episodes are going to be a 3-hour movie, and then it's going to be now we have spin-offs. And we'll see. So anyway, these are the timelines. I think we're going to see Crazy Horse. I think we're going to learn that the kimono wraith is based on the shape and history of this Japanese girl called Oke Ito, which is why they use the word Oke so often on the show. And I think in the 1880s Fromland, there's going to be a lion, maybe a baby elephant called Columbia, and it's going to be all about P.T. Barnum, circus train, circus freaks, clowns. We may see some mafia guys in the 1930s. And some characters may end up in a future version of Fromland. I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen now, actually. There's just been quite a few references that make me think that. All right, let's get to the time travel shenanigans. So I think Tabitha, Julie, Jim, and Ethan will, the whole Matthews family, maybe Victor too, will time travel to 1978. I think Ethan will shoot a younger version of his drunken grandfather, or it might be Henry, but there's definitely a grandfather paradox, and it's going to be Ethan doing it. I think that Ethan will steal Victor's gun from the post office. That's why we see him eyeing it early in season 1. And I think that he uses Victor's gun to shoot someone, and I think it might be the bearded man in the root cellar, potentially, that we see in episode 7. I think Julie, didn't you notice that in the remaining episodes, he's not there? He's just not in there. Where did Elgin put him? Anyway, Julie will encounter and talk to the jock monster. That's why he says, Julie, don't you recognize me? And then they'll rescue Eloise and Thomas. Eloise being Tabitha and Thomas being Jade. Thomas thinks that the boogeyman is good, and he's been indoctrinated to hate Jim. That's why when Thomas calls on the phone, that's the real Thomas, who's now around 8 years old. And he's going to, which suggests that actually the boogeyman's brought him forward in time, but I don't know how the phone calls work. Maybe he's calling from the past, so maybe that's why. But anyway, he will kill his grandfather. Julie will talk to the jock monster, and Jim, I think, is either captured or killed. It's more likely that he's captured, because I think there's a we have to go back moment, and I think it's going to be Jim related, but he may be killed. It may be that he genuinely does die, just not in the way we think. Maybe that's why they chose to kill him off. So they like the finale. They sort of hint at what's going to happen by like they make Julie the person who's like the story walker, so that if you're trying to solve the show, you know, oh, it's Julie, the one who's going to be bouncing around and time traveling the most in the real version, that sort of thing. So maybe the fact that Jim dies is because he's the one who actually does die at the end. But I actually think most of the cast die by the end. But just FYI, Boyd for sure. So anyway, we have them remembering their Thomas and Eloise maybe, and they may have ancestral memories too. So that little girl with the red rocks, I don't think that that's an earlier reincarnation of Tabitha at all. I may be wrong about that. Okay, it may be that reincarnation is real, but still there's these 3 episodes. But I actually think it's ancestral memory. I think Tabitha can remember things through her bloodline. I think it's possible that Jade will be able to as well, because I mean he's her son, right? And they're part of the same bloodline. Okay. There will also be a predestination paradox, I think. So what I've learned about the writers from my theorizing, I think, is that, and I don't think I can be, I'm not exaggerating here, that I think I would describe John Griffin and potentially Jeff Pinkner and maybe the rest of the Midnight Radio team and some of the assistant writers as well, potentially. Maybe they're all like this, but I think it's probably led by John Griffin and Jeff Pinkner, after Jeff Pinkner sort of bought into John Griffin's vibe. But I think I would describe John Griffin as a maximalist writer. He wants to fit everything in, everything. I'm not joking. Like, he will fill in the whole thing. So I think that they're going to try and fit in every single major type of time paradox on this show, except they're going to just hint at it. Like, so for example, Ethan killing his grandfather before in 1978 doesn't matter, because when you die in Fromland, eventually you get to return to the real world in your time and continue on with none of your memories. That's just my theory on that. So I think it doesn't matter, because he just returns to the real world after he's killed. But it still creates the paradox, right? Because he shoots his own grandfather. So I think similarly, a future version of Julie is going to try and stop herself from time traveling, which creates a Polchinski paradox, and a predestination paradox, which is where I think they're going to try and prevent Victor from being stuck in Fromland, and in so doing guarantee or start off the chain of events that actually makes him end up staying in Fromland. Let me just put my laptop on charge, just a bit low. Okay. So yeah, so predestination paradox, grandfather paradox, Polchinski paradox. We'll get to the bootstrap paradox later. Okay, so at the end of this 1978 thing, where a similar sort of cataclysmic thing is going on, and it's the end of the cycle, I think that potentially Tabitha has a Sophie's choice to make. I think that Tabitha will have to choose between time traveling with Julie, Eloise, and Thomas in Fromland, or returning to the real world with Ethan. I think she's going to be stuck there. Ethan's going to be crying over there, being like, no, Mom, Mom. And Julie's going to be like, Mom, help me. And she's going to pick Ethan. Yeah. It's interesting when you watch all the Catalina interviews, she's constantly talking about how much she loves her son and how she would choose her son over everything and that sort of thing. And then there's all these Sophie's Choice clues as well. Actually, there's not that many Sophie's Choice clues. There's only one from Jack Bender, but I don't know where I got it from, but I already had a Sophie's Choice in my theory, so I've glommed onto that. And I sort of, again, you have to watch the interviews to see Tabitha sort of, I can't even remember how she did it, but anyway, I think that there's a Sophie's Choice here. So I think that Tabitha returns to the real world with Ethan in 1978, and they live under assumed names in the United States. And I think then Julie time travels to 1993 with Thomas and Eloise, and then goes to the real world. So now Ethan's going to be older than Julie, and Tabitha's going to be a lot older, right? How many years is this? Let's see, I'm lazy. 15 years, right? So Ethan's going to be, what is he, 8? 24. No, 23. So, okay, 23 years old there, so he'll be older. And Tabitha, who's supposed to be in her mid-30s, let's say 37, she'll be 52 at this point. Okay, so in 1993, let's see, Julie returns to the real world as well. So for Julie, it's like Tabitha just abandoned her. But for Tabitha, it happened 15 years ago, right? So, okay, so Julie time travels to, I might have the year wrong, to be honest, it's just a guess. But it's rough, it'll be the 90s, I think. Interestingly, Julie wears a bob in the finale, and everyone seems to think it's from the 80s, but I'm pretty sure the bob was a 90s thing. I think someone called Twiggy may have set off the bob. I think, and twigs are a clue on the show, interestingly enough, but or the word twig anyway. Not sure what it means. Could be Twiggy. Could be a clue to the British model Twiggy, who popularized the bob. Anyway, or maybe it wasn't her. Maybe she just popularized something else. Okay, so blah blah blah. Okay, so anyway, so Eloise and Thomas have lost their minds, basically. They have no memory. This is a side effect of what the boogeyman does, basically. I think Julie still has hers, but the others do not. And Julie will find herself near Tabitha and Stephen King's house in Maine and will seek shelter there. So Tabitha and Stephen King have moved out of the famous Stephen King home in Maine now, so they can use that for filming. And it's actually supposed to become a Stephen King museum, and it hasn't launched yet. So it may be that this is how they launch it. We'll get people, time it with the same thing. But I'm pretty sure, they say things like the King's castle, or the King's in his castle, stuff like, that's how these clues work on the show, if you're looking for an example. Okay, so I think that Julie will meet with Tabitha King and Stephen King, and they'll call the police with Julie's permission, because she knows that Eloise is her mom now and she can't raise her. Eloise has zero memory, and I think that she actually goes and becomes a patient in an institution. And I think Eloise is named Tabitha after Tabitha King, because that's the name on the police report, and she doesn't remember who she is. And I think Julie leaves a note with Eloise telling her to be kind to men named Jim, which Eloise's adopted Colombian parents hide but acknowledge. And that's why they're nice to Jim, even though Tabitha thought they wouldn't be, which is this weird Chekhov's gun that I've been trying to solve since literally the first episode of season 1. So Tabitha, because why have this discussion about how she thought that Jim, her parents wouldn't like Jim, and then they surprisingly, she thought that they would hate Jim, and then they surprisingly didn't. It's just so random. Okay. So what else? So anyway, so that is how Tabitha is basically Eloise, who lost her memories and her mind, goes to an institution, gets better, and is adopted by Colombian parents who sort of tell her a different story of her childhood, but she's plagued by nightmares and things like that, and she sort of repressed these sort of memories of where she came from. I think it takes her a while to start forming memories, potentially. Anyway, whatever. The point is that she makes her bracelet from subconscious memory, and that's how you create a bootstrap paradox. She's copying a bracelet that she remembers seeing, and it creates a bootstrap paradox because she's copying a bracelet. She's copying a bracelet that she'd already made, if that makes sense. I probably didn't explain it too well, but you'll understand when you see it on the show. But effectively, if you're copying a copy, what came first? If the copy you're making is the thing you're already copying. So anyway, meanwhile in 1993, Julie drops Thomas off with a now much older Tabitha, who obviously can't raise herself, right? And we know, Tabitha has a good childhood, she has a good life, so Julie's not going to mess with the timeline. She knows now that Eloise is Tabitha. She knows that she's eventually going to get adopted by her grandparents, and she lets that happen. But with Thomas, she doesn't know what happens to Thomas. So remember how she talks about how she doesn't want to be lumbered with raising Ethan on her own. Well, she certainly is not going to want to be raising Thomas on her own. So I think she's going to find Tabitha and say, it's your responsibility to raise him. You abandoned me. You chose Ethan over me. Ethan's an adult now. You're gonna have Thomas, which Tabitha is very happy, but she's too old now to be Thomas's mother, so she has to pretend to be Thomas's grandmother. And because she doesn't want to get taken back to Fromland, she goes to France. And then Tabitha, therefore, is both his mother and his grandmother. And Ethan and Julie are Jade's siblings. Victor is his uncle, and Henry is his grandfather. And I think what will happen in 1993 is when Julie drops off Thomas with Tabitha, I think that she goes to Ethan and asks him to come back to Fromland to help her rescue Jim. We have to go back sort of moment. And they mentioned the word Band-Aid a lot as a clue, and I haven't been able to figure it out, but I do remember in the scene where Jack Shepherd asks Evangeline Lilly's character, I don't know why I've forgotten it now, to go back, he has a Band-Aid on his forehead. So, you know, maybe that's what it means, but I'm pretty sure they have to, she's like, come back with me. And I think he refuses, actually. And I think Julie goes back and ends up becoming a hermit and living alone, sort of like a Danielle Rousseau type character, at least for a while. I think at the King's house, Julie will receive a red book that's used as a diary. So by Philippe de Comines. So I think Stephen King gives her this red book and he's like, this is what it's all about. I've been waiting for someone to come. And I think that in this diary, it's gonna be written by a famous memoirist, a Burgundian memoirist called Philippe de Comines. And to explain how I know this or why I know this would take way too long. And again, it's not knowing, it's just theory. But you know, you have to speak as if when you're making a theory, you have to speak as if you know. It's a prediction. Okay, it's all prediction. Every single one of these things is a prediction. I don't know for sure, but this one, I feel like there's like a whole clue chain that ended up. I'm pretty sure about. I don't know about this book and the diary necessarily. I'm pretty sure there's a red book involved. I don't know. Anyway, if there is a diary, it's written by this guy. And I think that what we'll do is we'll get a flashback from the reading of this diary to the time of John Cabot or Bridget of York in Tudor England, because they use the word explorer a lot and they also use the word nun a lot. Now, I may be mistaken. Maybe these clues aren't pointing to what we're going to see on April 1st, but certainly they are clues to these two things. Although there are other explorers that end up in Fromland, so it may be that it's a clue, but certainly the nun clues have got to be, there could be a nun in another timeline that I haven't picked up. There are a few nuns, actually, now that I think about it. But anyway, we'll see. But here's how I imagine it, okay? If we do get a flashback, but we don't get the whole origin story of Fromland in one big movie, then this is what like the little taste of it I think they're going to leave us to set us all off, right? If they do give us like a, you know, and then it's like, now you need to watch the spin-off shows if you want to know what happened. Maybe. So I think it's going to be Dartford Priory in 1498. I think we're going to see, or maybe 1497 potentially. I think we're going to see like a nurse running down like the cloisters of an abbey with like a torch or a candle. It's cold and there's like a woman crying. I mean, this is a slightly stereotypical of this sort of story. You know, I've seen so many horror movies that sort of start this way. But you know, I think that it would be something like this. So she opens the door and she's told like, shut it. Shh, shh. And you know, did anyone see her? And there's this woman called Prioress Cresner, Elizabeth Cresner, who seems concerned with the secrecy. You know, she's concerned with secrecy because there's this teenage girl, Bridget, or maybe maybe she's closer to 20 actually. In reality, anyway, she's a young woman, and she's screaming in bed, and they're like, "Shh!" And it's clear that she's a nun herself. And Bridget gives birth to a girl that she names Agnes. Maybe someone calls her a princess. Everyone is sworn to secrecy, and maybe Bridget is told you can leave the baby or you're banished. Or maybe like none of that happens, and we just see her give birth to the baby, and they call her a princess. But if they do, like, I'm curious if that's what these nun clues mean. But I may be wrong. It may be just a clue to like one of the historical figures in the future timeline. I don't know. Or it could be a clue to an actor, which I'll get onto later. So when Eloise, when Eloise is with her, when Eloise is put in the hospital, the institution, I think that all she has is her mother's bracelet, and then after growing up as Tabitha, she later copies it from subconscious memory. This bracelet returns to Fromland with time-traveling Julie visiting the hospital to watch her birth. So she goes back to see her birth. That's when Jim loses his bracelet. Maybe she steals it from him basically and takes it back to Fromland after again. She then goes to Tabitha's funeral in France, I think, and then she buys Jade a soda on her way back at the airport. She's the nice lady that gave a soda to Jade at the airport, who said they come with you when you go. But that could be Christy as well. The only reason that's a possibility is because she's the only one who's actually heard that phrase, or like a variation of that phrase in the Mrs. Liu like funeral preparation scene. And yeah, of course, Ethan would be the uncle that Jade would go live with in the real world in 2005. Okay, so natural disasters. I think that Jade's bomb timer counts down and then goes off, and it sets off an earthquake that fractures the ground. And I think there's like a giant hole, and the town starts to crumble. There's like earthquakes and stuff. I think there's like a flood, a twister, a hurricane, rainstorm. Just imagine like just a big sort of CGI mess of things. And I think that this like flood is going to come in, and there's going to be this whirlpool, because there's like a fissure in the ground. I also think, I know it sounds crazy, but I think that they're going to use the special Fresnel lens in the lighthouse to focus sunlight or starlight like a laser to burn the monsters from up on high, because some like being is going to be like firing light through it or something. Because that's actually how these lenses work. I think I researched this, where I think if you put it through one way, it like expands it or focuses it or something in a really interesting way. So it could be used like a magnifying glass, because they keep using magnifying glass clues. But it could be a clue. There's so many things it could be a clue for. Okay, so the submarine. So remember how I said there's this plane, there's this Sputnik thing. Well, there's also a submarine that went missing around Newfoundland. It was a British submarine called the P514, and I think it's buried under the root cellar. I think that's what all that. So they keep using the word hatch as a hint and things like that. And obviously hatch is connected to Lost, and there's a polar bear at the end of this. There's a hatch. I think they want people to think, oh, maybe this is a spin-off of Lost somehow. Or a prequel to Lost, or maybe that's what's on. Maybe this is what the cork that was the island buried, or something like that. It's not that, but I think that's what people might think for a while. But I think actually, instead of this hatch leading to the caves like it did for Boyd, I actually think it's going to be lead to this submarine. And they're going to take shelter in it when the flood begins. Some of them, not all of them, some of them. If I had to guess, it would be Elgin and Randall, just because of a conversation I had them having. And I think when they're down there, they're going to see through the porthole like a giant squid, maybe a great white shark, dolphins, porpoises, whales, and a giant crab, that sort of thing. But I'm not 100%. And there may be some underwater welding, although I'm fairly certain that's a clue to Woody Harrelson's latest film, which again, I'll get onto this later because it won't make sense to you. All right. So anyway, so as I've said, there's a life raft that they'll save people with. I think Bacta, who's constantly talking about being a survivor, will be on it, and maybe Donna. But again, she's part of that sacrificial ritual. I don't know who survives it or not. Maybe they just all die. It's hard to tell. But in fact, they definitely don't die, because some people need to be on the boat. But I just don't know who. A lot of people are going to die, mostly extras, but basically like the whole town dies. And then some of the main cast, I think, will go off onto spin-offs. Okay, so yeah, there'll be a Loch Ness type monster sea serpent that chases the boat, and they'll shoot flares at it probably. I think that there'll be a tidal wave in this whirlpool, and they'll be sucked into this whirlpool. And I think it'll actually pull them into the center of Fromland, and then there'll be no gravity there. And then they'll use like a winch with an anchor, like a grappling hook maybe, or like a fishing rod or something, to reel themselves back to the surface. Again, it was very tinfoil, a lot of this stuff. I've just tried to put it together. They drop these hints, and I'm like, I know it means something. Here's my best guess at it. So after this, they're going to journey to an island. So they've got out of the whirlpool. They survived the whirlpool. It's sort of like an allegory for Odysseus. I think they hook it onto a tree, just like Odysseus hooked onto a fig tree to save him from Charybdis, which is actually one of the monsters on the show was originally Charybdis in the mythology of Fromland. Okay, so I think there's going to be a rat-infested Canadian amusement park town in a tropical environment that's going to be based on the Trinity Loop amusement park in Newfoundland. And it will have a Ferris wheel, a mini golf, a merry-go-round, 4 kings depicted in some way, or it might be 4 men, 4 prominent men, teacup rides, and a roller coaster. And I think a uniformed Mountie monster and also Canadian sitcom stereotypes will be present. It may be that the Mountie is actually like their sheriff equivalent, and it's just like a normal, like former Mountie. But certainly a Mountie will be present. And yeah, I think it will be populated by a Canadian community of others, played by former Lost cast members, at least in cameo form. Although, again, they could just be part of this celebrity list that I'll tell you about what I think that means later. But some of the names that I think are being referenced here and that we'll see in Fromland in some way, whether it's a prank show that, spoiler alert, that's what I think it means. Terry O'Quinn, who actually I think the doll was actually designed to look a bit like him, just like the way the painting of the boy in white was made to look like Michael Emerson. And I think Josh Holloway, Matthew Fox, and Evangeline Lilly will be there because there's been references to movies they've made or things they've been involved in the clue chains. And yeah, I think they're going to be led by a woman who may be an older version of Julie, who as was at one time, as I said earlier, a Daniel Rousseau type character. That's the sort of hermit type character that lived in the woods on her own after giving away her baby. So I imagine it as the survivors, they get off the lifeboat, they stagger into this hot jungle, they stumble around into a clearing, and they see this like amusement park, Canadian amusement park, like a Canadian flag, but it's in this tropical environment. They're like, what the hell? I mean, a Mountie rides up to them. He's like, get inside. It's not safe in the light. You know, it's the opposite here, where in the Canadian town, it's not safe during the daytime and it's only safe at night. That's what I think may be the like reverse of it. I also think we're going to zoom out. They use the word zoom and zoom out so often. I don't know what it means, but I think it may be that they're going to sort of zoom out of Fromland and let us see its shape. So I think it might be like a bubble or a bottle, because basically Fromland is inside a witch's bottle. In my mind, I'm pretty certain about that. They're trapped inside a broken witch's bottle. It's like probably cracked or the top's broken off. You'll notice on the From season 3 movie poster, there's a bottle with its top broken. So maybe that's what they were trying to tell us. But it's certainly a broken bottle or a fractured bottle. That's how, you know, the curse has been damaged actually, because the objects that created the curse, these magical objects that we use to create the curse that traps these monsters in, a lot of them were plundered and taken in the real world. And I suspect the way to defeat these monsters is to go out in the real world and collect them. But you can read more about my other theory, which is at the bottom of this Reddit post, if you wish to learn more about that. And also maybe go through a little bit of it on my spreadsheet. So I imagine it as the survivors getting off the lifeboat. Oh yeah, I've said that. So yeah, we'll see the world shape. I think it's going to be a bottle with like Canadian Fromland on top, American Fromland in the upside down. And we may see all these figures playing the game, like, you know, where we see, you know, it's almost like a metaphor where we almost see things being moved, like people becoming game pieces and playing cards and things like maybe even vehicles and things like that. Okay, so we're looking at this and we're like, really, they're going to kill Boyd, main character of the show? They're going to kill Tabitha? Actually, they're not going to kill Tabitha, sorry, but they're going to kill a whole bunch of main cast. Jade. Well, here's the thing. I think by the end, nobody else is left in town. It's a ghost town. If it's not just a complete ruin, I think many of the major characters will be dead. And I think this round of the game is lost. Basically, they lost this round. I think the dead souls, what happens when you die is your soul is stored in a tree when you die, sort of growing from seeds. And I think that, and that's why the trees are moving, but it may also be because Fromland's slowly shrinking. I don't know. There's certainly something to do with shrinking here. So you'll see me here in my theory, people may be shrunk into a snow globe or something like that. We may see people getting turned into really small and kept in like a monster's pocket or something. A lot of clues to shrinking, but I don't know what it means. It may be a clue to, you know, a shrink on a TV series. Again, it's hard. So I think when you die, your ghost ends up, you become a person in white basically, and you arrive in this sort of black and white. So it's definitely going to be film noir, no color. So it's going to be a gray world. They're constantly talking about the gray area and things like that. Gray area is going to be really important next season, they say. So okay, so root-filled hellscape. I think it's going to be full of roots. It's going to be like a ruin. It's going to be a mirror version of the real world. So we're going to see Fromland, but it's going to be like, you know, ruined and you know, the world of the dead basically, right? It's like a reflection of the real world, and it's going to be a worse version. And I think there's going to be a woman in white, an older woman, who would be Bridget of York potentially, and she might lead the ghosts in a rebellion. So I think some people get to return back to the real world, or most do at the end, but maybe there's like some sort of judgment that's sort of fixed, you know. So maybe like a sort of Egyptian style like weighing of your soul or something like that. But either way, I think some people, they don't get to leave. They're trapped. And I think Bridget, who created all this, they won't let her leave. And I think the boy in white is her son, and they're keeping the boy in white from her, basically. And that's how they torture her. Their main mission in Fromland, other than playing this game, is to torture Bridget, I think. And that's why the peaches are there, because I think they brought the peach truck in for Victor to live off, her ancestor, because I think Bridget's husband, who I think is Sancio Cabot, I think he was killed by something called the penalty of the peach, which is where you have to eat ground peach pits until you die from cyanide poisoning. Anyway, so in this world, I think that there's going to be a tomb or a pyramid. It maybe even be like a replica of Cleopatra and Mark Antony's tomb, and there'll be like an eagle standard in there or something like that. And there might even be mummies, because they're constantly talking about wrapped and wrapped around and things being wrapped up, and bandages and things like that. So ultimately, many of the main cast, so I think there'll be mummies somehow. They'll look like mummies, or the pyramid will suggest they're mummies. But ultimately, many of the main cast are going to be on ice until they want to bring them back in later in the spin-offs. So they're basically like trapped in the world of the dead, but there's nothing to say they can't come back to life as a ghost in Fromland, walking around as a person in white, or maybe returning to a real world alive, because that's what happens. And it's likely the world of the dead is completely silent when none can speak. But if not, they might only be able to say one word, which is Ankui. Okay, so I think that there might be a Severance crossover, because there's a lot of clues to the creator of Severance, Ben Stiller, and also the actors on Severance are referenced as well. And also, since season 1, Jack Bender has teased that John Griffin wants to get back into acting. And I think that and there's also clues to cameos. Like, it's interesting, in a lot of the interviews, they're constantly talking about this app called Cameo, and they send loads of cameos out and publish them publicly. And I think that's what this means. I don't know whether Ben Stiller, I'm combining these, and I may be wrong, but it's possible that John Griffin might cameo in Severance's finale, and then Ben Stiller and maybe Harold as well, potentially, and then the vice versa for Ben Stiller and Adam Scott. But it's quite unlikely, to be honest. I probably should have put this in tinfoil, but I think John Griffin will cameo, and I think that Ben Stiller and Adam Scott will appear in Fromland in some way, but it's probably not in the actual main show. It's something else, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So what are the spin-offs? Well, I think there's going to be a Canadian Fromland spin-off with American actors. I think they're going to, it's a bit of a play on the fact that current From is like, mostly played by Canadians. Canadians playing Americans, so wouldn't it be funny if Canadian Fromland was Americans playing Canadians? Although there's a lot of there's a lot of tax benefits to filming in Canada with Canadian actors, so I'm not 100% sure on that. Again, it may just be some of the American actors from Lost cameo and then they all die, or maybe they all, again, there's this other spin-off show that I think was going to feature a whole bunch of celebrities, and it may be that instead. But I think, given that they've used the word cameo, someone is going to cameo on From in this triple episode that I'm predicting. We'll see if it happens. We'll see if I'm completely wrong. We'll see if April 1st is going to swing around. I actually have a bet where, if I'm wrong, I will eat crow, and I will take some photos of me pretending to eat this crow. This little fluffy crow doll that I bought. So that's my bet if I get it wrong. But if I get it right, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so I think there's going to be this Canadian Fromland where they alternate as well. Wouldn't that be cool if there's like the current main show with like the future version, which is sort of like a continuation, and then there's like the spin-off Canadian one. Maybe they alternate between, I don't know how they do it. But I remember John Griffin was talking about something about there being like a front burner, back burner thing that they're doing. And I think that was a clue to how these spin-offs are going to work. I think they're going to like film one at a time, so we're getting constant From. Wouldn't that be amazing? I think there's definitely a time travel spin-off. And I think that this will include new cast from the future and surviving cast stuck in the past. I think there'll be a converging timeline endgame where like all of these different converging, in all these different timelines, I think there might be a convergent point where main characters from all these different time periods all are involved in one big sort of climax. Maybe, I don't know. There's a little tinfoil there. Okay, what else? Yeah, okay. This is really the crazy stuff. Okay, I'm gonna sound so nutty saying this, but what can I do? There are so many clues pointing to this, and I have no idea what it means, but this is my best guess. Okay, I think here's all I can say. Okay, the filmography and names and the history and the activities of every single one of the celebrities on this list, and there are some major celebrities: Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Henry Cavill, Daniel Craig, Helen Mirren, Emma Stone. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio. These are some of the biggest stars, like Robert Downey Jr. Oasis is on the bottom here. Justin Bieber. I swear to God, all of these actors are being referenced in the YouTube interviews. There's actually more clues to that than there are to all of the above that I just talked about. The majority of the clues are pointing to these actors. And I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? I have no idea. And you can, if you're interested, you can scroll up my Discord and you can watch me slowly losing my mind as I solved more and more clues. And again, it could be an extreme case of apophenia, and it may well be, but I know for a fact they're dropping clues. So, okay, let's take that logical leap. And then, so maybe I'm misinterpreting the clues, but I think it's unlikely that the clues aren't there, if that makes sense, just because of the sheer amount of time I put into analyzing them. I can see these words being repeated. It's just hard to scientifically prove it. I would need to basically do the transcripts for every YouTube video they've done over the last 3 years, and then pull out all the quotes where they've been using these phrases and keywords. But I'm not going to do that. The best I could do was making a Excel spreadsheet where I went through them all. But anyway, let me finish this off, and I'll show you how this spreadsheet works, and you can judge for yourself. So anyway, so I think there's an Amazon reunion reality TV candid camera escape room spinoff. So since the show first began, so believe it or not, up until like 4 days ago, I thought that they only started dropping these clues after about 6 months ago. And then but only because really it was only because I only started really watching these interviews about a year ago, maybe. And I certainly wasn't looking for clues until like maybe 6 months ago. So anyway, I thought that these celebrity clues go all the way back to season 1. So I don't know, but they seem to have expanded as time's gone by. So they started off with like one small set, and then as each season's gone by, they've sort of expanded out. But I don't know if that's 100% true, because I haven't watched that many of the old interviews. Some of these interviews go on for hours, and you have to listen really closely. And frankly, it's really boring when you know that most of their stories aren't really true. They're just sort of contriving them to drop these clue hints in. Again, I know I sound super crazy when I say that, but seriously, it's insane how many clues they leave. So anyway, so look, I think that the hidden puzzle of the YouTube interviews, which does not exist on the show so much, but they do occasionally drop hints, especially in those last 3 episodes, there's a few hints. But anyway, I don't know what these clues mean, but they have been pointing to a whole series of celebrities, including famous musicians and actors and sports people. And it's actually fascinating, if I'm right about this, if someone said gun to your head, what's going on, I'm just going to tell you. I think what's going on is that I don't know if you ever saw George Lucas talking about rhyming and how the stories rhyme and everything. And he sounds very sort of esoteric and because he seemed to know his craft so well, he was given full control of the prequels, and then people didn't see the rhyming. But what I think is really interesting about this show is that the clues rhyme a great deal. So one clue will be a clue to like 5 or 6 different things sometimes. So not only are the clues that they're dropping, I think, to do with the sequence of events in this alt ending that I'm predicting, but I think they're simultaneously, a lot of them, clues to these actors. If that's the case, it's one of the cleverest things you could ever see. But also, there'll be a clue to a historical figure. Like, for example, the word okay is a clue to Okay Ito, the historical Japanese young woman, the first ever Japanese person to live and die in the United States. But also the OK Corral, the famous shootout. I think there's one more, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, so let me tell you what I think this means. I theorize that a unique show has been secretly filmed in Nova Scotia, where actors from major franchises associated with Midnight Radio, Amazon Studios, Paramount, MGM Plus. So this is what's really interesting, actually, is the people on my list. They kept coming up. I was like, what is the pattern here? And I realized that the people involved in the making of From, or the sister companies like Paramount and Amazon, well, I guess Amazon's the parent, Paramount's the sister, Midnight Radio's the, I don't know, the egg donor, and I think the Russo brothers are the other donor. I don't know. But the long story short of it is, I think that they've called in a lot of favors or just called up their friends and said, hey, do you want to be involved in a fun April Fool's alt-ending twist of some sort? Or an amazing new prank show? Or I don't know. But anyway, so here's what I think happened. I'm just going to tell you, and you can tell me how insane it sounds if you wish. But I theorize that they were all discreetly invited to this event in Nova Scotia. Now, what's really interesting is Nova Scotia Airport is only 2 hours from Toronto and 2 hours from New York. So it's not that difficult to get to, believe it or not. And then it's only a 40-minute drive from the airport to from land. So it's possible that they could have hired these actors for what they thought was a reunion interview show at a nice luxury resort. And then on their way there, they end up in Fromland. And maybe this was filmed before season 1 even came out. So they had no way of knowing that it wasn't real. And maybe it's sort of like a punked thing. And I imagine they signed pretty comprehensive NDAs. And I imagine that I think what they probably did was they brought in some celebrities to try it out, see if it works. The celebrities loved it so much, they'd call up their friends and say, hey, you got to do this reunion thing. It's so great. And then, because they want to see how their friends will react. And maybe that's how they got so many names on. But I also think potentially the writers' strikes may have had something to do with it as well. But anyway, let me read through this. So I think lured in by an all expenses paid, relaxed getaway at Fox Harbor Resort. So I actually looked, right? Because, Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp, these are some really serious celebrities. They're not going to stay anywhere. And actually, Nova Scotia doesn't have the most amazing hotels, and I realized that really Fox Harbor, which admittedly is about 2 hours drive away from the From set, is pretty much the only place that I think could host, even if they're doing this in batches, and I'm sure they did it in batches. Like I think they probably had like the cast of The Office and Parks and Rec showing up at the same time. They had the action stars all showing up, the Sylvester Stallone and Tom Cruise and whatever. Jack, the guy who plays Jack Reacher. Maybe they did it that way. I don't know. But anyway, I think it's Fox Harbor Resort if they did stay somewhere. And I think they thought it was a reunion show. That's probably what tempted them in. Oh, you get to see all your old castmates and, you get well paid. But you have to sign this NDA and we can't really tell you. There's going to be some little surprises, you have to sign this and that. And they're probably like, oh, okay, there'll be some fun little games. Probably a sort of thing like Ellen where someone jumps out a box to scare you. They probably have to sign something for that. So maybe that's what they thought, but and maybe their friends told them it was amazing and they should go do it. And then, of course, they end up in Fromland and someone comes on and says, there's monsters that come out at night and you can't leave. You never know. So I picture it as a sort of, and I think they all get in a coach from the airport. They're on their way to wherever they think they're going to film, and then they end up in Fromland, just like with the Michigan coach. And I think they'll mix and match. So I think the cast of The Walking Dead and Invincible will come on with some other people. Maybe it'll just be one set. It depends on how they want to do it and who signed up. But I picture it as a reality TV candid camera. So they use the word candid and reality a lot in their interviews, and I wonder it's because it's this prank show. So I think it's almost like a celebrity escape room, haunted house, punked combo. So you arrive, it's a reality TV, candid camera, haunted house, prank and escape room reunion show filmed on the existing From set. So unsuspecting actors, they would arrive by coach and maybe select From cast members might have been there to portray their actual characters. Wouldn't that be amazing if they filmed it before season 1 and they had all the actors play themselves except for Harold, who was maybe too famous, and see if they could get away with it. I don't know. So imagine they're all going through the same experience Jade did, throughout the whole thing. And will they? And maybe some of them will think it's real. Sometimes they won't. And I imagine the celebrity, just like Punked, where the celebrity recommends their next friend to join. I think it might be that. There is a chance that this may be a Halloween special because they use the word trick and treat, and they say Halloween a few times. And it may even be a relaunched Punked potentially because Demi Moore is referenced a lot, and so is Ashton Kutcher. So it may be that they MGM bought the rights to Punked and they decided to use all their existing sets as part of their brand strategy. Because I actually think that MGM may be one of the most innovative sort of program. I think they're really they're trying to do. I think they're experimenting basically because they're up against it. They're a smaller platform as an additional subscription on Amazon Prime, which I actually think is great because, a lot of people will have Prime. A lot of people enjoy The Boys and Amazon shows, and then it's like, well, yeah, but why don't you pay extra instead of having Netflix and getting even more shows? I think it works, but I think that they're experimenting, saying, viral marketing, really unique and interesting shows, really knowing their audience, which is a very specific audience, interestingly. But anyway, I think MGM are doing some really interesting things. So it may be that they've bought the rights to Punk'd from Ashton Kutcher, and they've relaunched it, and they're sort of they're saying, look, we've built these expensive sets. Why don't we kill two birds with one stone? And also John Griffin, he is a maximalist. He's been dreaming of this since, I think, 2016. I think he said in an interview. No, sorry, he started writing it in 2016, but I think the inception's been since 9/11. He's been maybe it's been percolating at the back of his mind. Because I believe he was in Newfoundland on 9/11. I think he was part of that Gander come from away story, which is why this whole story is based around Newfoundland. Okay, sorry, I'm rambling too much. So it may be a Halloween special, maybe even be a relaunch Punk'd. And I don't know if this is what we're going to see on April Fool's. It may be that April Fool's is just an all ending or something like that, and we don't see any of this. And maybe it's going to be 2 more seasons of celebrity references, and then we'll find out, or something like that. I don't know. But what I do think is that I think the sheer number of these celebrities, and the scale of them, the celebrity of these people. So these are some of the biggest stars in the world. If I met one of them, I'd be utterly, awestruck. So how did they get all these people to Nova Scotia to do a prank show? I think that it's possible. Okay, yes, calling in favors. They're probably, some of these writers, the Russo brothers, certainly Amazon's execs, they're all friends with these actors. They pay their salaries or they pay their bills. They're gonna lean on those favors. But I think also, 2023, there were writer strikes and actor strikes. And what's really interesting is that those strikes specifically exempted reality television. So in 2023, we had every major celebrity actor with having to sit on their hands while these strikes were happening, but they could take part in reality TV. And I wonder if MGM were like, oh my God, we're going to be, our whole programming schedule is going to be thrown out of whack. Why don't we just double down on the Punk'd thing and get even more celebrities in, because they don't have anything to do, and wouldn't it be fun? Who knows? We'll see. Because the problem is if one of them recognizes From, while they're there, and they're like, oh, this is all rubbish. I imagine that pretty quickly they'll realize that it's a prank, and then it becomes an escape room. But I think the initial arrival in Fromland will be their genuine reactions of, oh my God, what is this? And then they'll realize it's fake, but then it's like, but you still need to take part in this escape room. Okay, so tinfoil. I think Henry was in a dream simulation the whole time, and Tabitha just visited it. Let me explain why. We don't see the police officer outside when Henry talks to them, and I thought that was kind of sus. There's all these the way that clues are hidden in Fromland are also hidden in the real world. The clothing, the way they dress. It seems, the objects in the background. Maybe they're just continuing it on, but no, the way the extras were walking around in the background, the floor, the 13th floor, it says to me it's not real. And here's the thing, again, John Griffin is a maximalist. What I think you're going to find when you get to the end is that actually every single theory is going to be partly correct. And when I say that, what I mean is, it's not exactly that that is the answer to Fromland. It can't obviously be everything. But so for example, we had Tabitha waking up from a coma. So the coma theorists are technically right. We're going to have a simulation inside Fromland of Camden, Maine. So technically, the simulation theorists will be right. We're going to have the 4 angels that started off as these 7 beings arriving in Fromland via meteor. So technically, they're aliens. So there's going to be a cult in the origin story that the evil priest, Savonarola, I think is who the evil priest will be. He will start a cult. So I think that there's a purgatory, world of the dead, right? So purgatory people are technically correct. So do you see what I mean? So it's maximalism, right? I also noticed that, okay, there's a whole other mini game where you need to trace objects across time using historical authors and creators and scientists and philosophers, and they pass these. You sort of have to track using the clues on through like Wikipedia. It's almost like the Wikipedia game. Again, watch my other theory if you're interested in how it works. But basically, you trace these objects being passed across time. That's how I know Stephen King ends up with a red book, because the object is a red book, and you can see it pass through the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Victor Hugo, Lewis Carroll, and it ends up with Stephen King. What I found really interesting is that some of the celebrities at the ends of the clue chains, some of them, their names are also Stephen, and then it ends up with someone else sometimes or not, and maybe I've got that wrong, that's someone else. So it's possible that there's some weird thing where it's all the Stevens, and Julie meets a whole bunch of Stevens for some reason. Again, it's tinfoil. Julie or Fatima may be kidnapped by Bigfoot to replicate King Kong, potentially. So maybe that's who kidnaps Fatima, and we will see Bigfoot and be like, what the hell? Fromley will come across a prototype film reel projector made by Louis Le Prince. Now, the only reason I'm saying this is for two reasons. One, they use the word real and really so often. I don't know if that's a clue to we're going to the real world and like celebrities, whatever. But in my first, there's this book I wrote called The Chosen. It's a part of a trilogy, and it's very much like From, but with a different answer. And it has these. Well, it's very much how I think From is going to be. It's not very much like From now, other than I guess it's a bit more like. It's like Lost meets Yellow Jackets is how it's being pitched at the moment to by my film agent out there. But effectively, it's about a group of teenagers who get teleported to a different realm and made to take part in a mysterious game, and they don't know who's put them there or why they're there or why there's all these weird things present there, historical things. So the point is, in my book, I used this. So there's this famous John Griffin's clearly researched people that have gone missing from history. This is really tinfoil, but in my book, I had this guy called Louis Le Prince who invented the first film reel projector, who went missing on a train in France, but his ultimate destination was the United States, and no one knows if he disappeared in the United States or he disappeared in France. It's just the last he was seen. I wonder, and then there's been some clues to early French cinema, like as in they literally use the words early French cinema in interviews. So I wonder whether John Griffin has used the same missing historical figures object as I have, because in my theory, he's used a nuclear bomb, although a different one as I did, or he contrived a nuclear bomb using a nuclear reactor. But I wonder whether there's this film reel projector used where you can manually operate it, and it will create it will project an image, and it'll be like 6 frames. That's what the first prototype film projected it, but he had his prototype with him when he went missing. And some people say Edison stole it from him, or whoever it was, or Lumiere stole it. Someone supposedly stole it from him. I don't know who it was. Don't want to slander some poor historical figure. I imagine From is going to do a lot of that. Okay, so also there's a clue to Loreen. So I wonder if Loreen, no offense, Loreen, I hadn't heard of your music before. If you were watching, I'm sure she's not. But there's a clue to Loreen. If she's not a celebrity, then she wrote a song for From, or I don't know. They use the word Loreen. It could be a clue to something else. I don't know. But it seemed like a clue. And when they referenced Loreen, they said it's just a first name, not a surname, or something like that. And Loreen was obviously like Madonna is known as one name. So I thought that was interesting. This is just super tinfoil, but I thought I'd throw it in there just for fun. With this big sort of viral moment that they're going for, I wonder if they're going to simultaneously, using this, announce that Lily James is going to be the new Lara Croft and Aaron Taylor Johnson is going to be the new James Bond. I wonder, because interestingly, I think MGM owns both those franchises, and they're both castings that everyone's excited to hear. And by the way, I think they're excellent. I don't think you could pick a better choice for Lara Croft. Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think, like Daniel Craig, it's just impossible to know until you've seen it. I think we've seen versions of Aaron Taylor Johnson's sort of secret agent, but it's a lot less cool and calm and collected and that's fine. It's not the role he's playing in those other things. But I think that he'd be an excellent one, and I think he's going to be a more of a Daniel Craig sort of bruiser type Bond rather than the sort of suave Pierce Brosnan type type Bond. Anyway, so and then here's a final tinfoil. If it's not this prank show, whatever, or something else, it could be that whoever solves from gets to meet one of these celebrities or something, or they get to attend an event with all these celebrities and meet them briefly or something. Because it's weird that they're all clustered around Amazon and MGM and the people who behind From, that they're all their sort of friends and colleagues or people they worked with in the past. Sorry. Apologies. So anyway, it's possible that there's a cameo extravaganza, and the 1978 massacre that we saw, like for example, Victor, when he's talking about that onion thing and eating them raw and the layers, I think that the onion is a clue to Daniel Craig, believe it or not. So anyway, there's a really slim chance, very slim, that in the 1978 massacre that we've seen the aftermath of, but we can't, most of them have their faces missing. We never really see the faces of the people. One of them kind of looks like Ellis, actually, which I didn't include in this theory because it's, maybe I should have, but I do wonder whether that's actually Ellis that we see in the intro, because he's gone back to 1978 with the Matthews family and he dies there. And it's interesting because I think there's a chance that the boogeyman can only imitate people that have died. It's interesting that he imitates Katri and Abby, but then Boyd has a vision of Ellis, and Ellis is still alive. So the only way this would work is if Ellis goes back in time, dies there to give the boogeyman the template to use it in the current timeline while he's still alive, if that makes sense. But you know, because I found that really weird when Ellis was like, "Come back down, Dad." That was super weird. I think that's what it is. One of the ghosts appearing as a specter. So I think each person who's going to be possessed potentially is seeing that ghost taking the form of someone from their past who's died. Okay, so anyway, it could be that there's this big cameo extravaganza where we literally see Tom Cruise, Jack Reacher, all these badasses, Keanu Reeves, whoever, getting slaughtered in Fromland. But I think it's more likely this other one. But I'm just throwing it out there just for fun. Okay, so I do genuinely believe this. I think From is the most predictable show ever made, but only if you're paying attention. But look, ultimately, at least one of these things is true. Okay, this is either an elaborate prank orchestrated by John Griffin and Midnight Radio on theorists, but I'm the only one who's been fooled because I'm the only one who went deep and crazy enough to pick up on it. 2, it's a historic prank orchestrated by Amazon and their partners, maybe the biggest TV event of all time, maybe. Yet somehow only I have not been fooled. And then the final one, which I think most people watching this will think is the most likely, that it's an extreme case of apophenia, and the only one fooling me is myself. Which is fine. You know, that could be what it is. It really could be. I'm trying to have fun with it, guys. Please don't hate me too much. I'm just having fun. But, you know, it's if I'm wrong, then, you know, at least it was fun. And hopefully you enjoyed watching someone slowly go insane on YouTube. Anyway, so look, I wanted to revise my final answer now. I had a version of this pre-season 3, which you can go to my old theory and read. But I've discovered a few things in between. So this is my final answer before season 3 ends. Which is, and I'm going to read it all out, and it's a run-on sentence, and it will make very little sense to you. The main changes are that it's 4 angels and 7 cursed humans. It's the people of Gomorrah. There's a whole 1001 Nights Sinbad timeline as well that I missed last time. I actually referenced it in the video saying I'm probably missing some Iranian Arabic one, but it's just too much. And then lo and behold, it appears. What else? I've got Tabitha. So I previously had Tabitha as Eloise, but I didn't have Jade as Thomas. So now Jade as Thomas. That's it. So I'm going to read it all through. Okay, so Fromland is an ancestral curse that once held Ben Franklin, Frank Sinatra, the Bearded Lady, Henry Morgan, and Crazy Horse. Located beneath Cape Race Lighthouse, contained in a broken bottle of urine and holy nails, wrapped in a witch's ladder of artifacts, where medieval board and tarot games are played in mirrored Canadian and US farmlands and a pyramid land of the dead, between 4 angels, 7 cursed humans, and the people of Gomorrah from over a dozen mythologies and religions, which include Christian, Greek, Hebrew, Egyptian, Arthurian/Welsh, Irish, sort of Dante's Hell, Heaven and Purgatory, which is sort of like a sort of Italian folklore, I guess, now. Templar/Cathar mythology, Norse mythology and history, actually. Templar and Cathar history and Norse history. Iranian/Indian/Arabic, which is the 1001 Nights Sinbad portion. Indigenous Canadian, that's the John Cabot timeline, I believe, and then modern Canadian, that's what we're going to see in this all ending, I believe. And they began their lives as Samael, Shamsiel, Sariel, and Azazel, Canaan, Cain, Lilith, Leah, Sarai, Rebecca, and Rachel. So these are the 4 matriarchs of Israel. I believe that they are they like become immortal basically and become unwilling participants in this game. Potentially. So these beings, they start as 7 of them, they start as humans, but they become immortal, and I don't know why they become immortal. I think they're cursed actually somehow, and they evolve into different they can shapeshift eventually, and they sort of take on the form of different beings in different timelines, and I don't know how it's all going to play out, but this is the framework that I've ended up with, and it seems to be what all the clues are referencing. But I just don't know, and I have interrupted myself again. Sorry. With animal familiars harvesting emotions through human fluids and organs to battle in the form of Bigfoot and other evolving Canadian mythological beings. There are more things that I got that I changed. Alongside time-traveling Julie and the tree ghost of centuries-old Bridget of York, a former pregnant nun, English princess, and cunning folk woman who took part in pagan international celebrations and endured a witch's trial that included a penalty of the peach by a mad homophobic priest who faked his death, all while marooned in Newfoundland with Dracula. Forgot to add that in as well. And Matthias Corvinus actually will be there as well. Following an escape with her brother and pretender to the throne after he was broken out of the Tower of London by John Cabot, whose descendants, Tabitha and Jade, are unknowingly time-traveling amnesiac Eloise and Thomas, alongside the secretive order of the Brotherhood of Death at the behest of Philip the Handsome, spurring warring Rosicrucian orders founded by Da Vinci, safeguarding and seeking objects across time, including Bridget's Esmeralda's Devil's Forehead Urim Emerald Tablet, Cathar Holy Grail Philosopher's Grailstone, once sought by a gay Jewish Nazi SS officer who loved Himmler, that was given to Elizabeth I by an occult magician, and passed between writers, artists, inventors, musicians, including Stephen King, Monty Python, and David Bowie, like a historical sisterhood of the traveling pants, inspiring works through dreams, including Lost, Cthulhu, Alice in Wonderland, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it was all dreamed up by John Griffin when he was trapped in Gander, Newfoundland on 9/11. Sorry I didn't read that all out loud at once. That was my intention, but I'm so easily distracted. So anyway, you can see my original theory here. You can see no one likes the theory. Most of the comments are not very nice, and very few people have liked it, but that's fine. It's what I expected. No one's gone, this reads like nonsense, and I get it. So I'm not offended. I get it. So now might be a good time to check some comments. Yeah, well, a few people came along to say hello. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I've been looking at the screen. I just wanted to get through the theory. I'm going to switch now to, oh, can I share? Did that work? Can you see it? Yes. Okay. So for those of you who care, this is how I've been doing it. There's probably a way better way of doing this, but this is how I ended up doing it. So for each actor, I gave them a column, and then I listened to their interviews, and anything that I felt was a clue, words being repeated, words said awkwardly, weird stories, weird phrasings, stuff that fell out of place. I've listed them all, and then I've used them to try and figure out who the celebrities are and how the finale will supposedly go. So we'll see if it works. I don't know. But anyway, this is how it looks. And you're welcome. I mean, look, I'm on the video now. I can scroll slowly for whoever wants to not have to do this work themselves. If they want to try and reverse engineer it, I will scroll through. Some of these go on really quite far. Anyway, it's a lot, but I've done my best. Done my best for you here. Okay, and then here's the timeline. So just so you know how it works, this is all out of order now, and there's like 4 additional people that I'm missing. And anyway, look, this is how I think it works. So it's basically like there's a different timeline where these objects, they evolve over time. There's like this set of objects that seem to be part of various mythologies. They have these shared objects, and again, it's archetypes, right? These archetypes across time and all these different mythologies. They basically, every single one of these mythologies is connected to an island, okay? And in these mythologies, as it's portrayed on the show, that island is Newfoundland. So in the Greek times, it was the island of the Sirens. In the Israeli times, it was known as Ophir. In the Egyptian times, it was Punt. In the Welsh times, it was known as Avalon. In the Irish times, it was known as the Promised Land. Sinbad's Isle, Viking Vinland, Templar Astoti Land, Dante's Circles of Hell, and then it's Tudor Newfoundland, and now they're trapped in modern Fromland. So anyway, I'm missing. This is wrong now, but I hope it gives you an understanding of how the timelines work and everything. So hopefully that makes sense. If there's a lot I haven't filled in, the whole Sinbad's Isle thing I haven't bothered too much with. And then here, this will be fun. Here are the historical figures that I think are being referenced. So you can see them all here. These are the ones that I think are going to appear in the time travel portion. So these are the ones that are important actually here. This is the flashback. This is the origin story set. This is the cast, effectively, of the origin story of Fromland. I suspect I'm starting to think that we'll get it as a feature film, actually. But, that may sound crazy to you. This list is way too long. There's a whole bunch of false positives in there, I suspect. But this is the 1672 timeline. There's a Revolutionary War timeline where, like, literally the founding fathers and people are going to show up. Ben Franklin. We got Crazy Horse and Caroline Dye, who's responsible for the hoodoo stuff that we're seeing with scarecrows and things like that on the show. But so this is going to be, I think this is what we're going to see in the spin-off show. Certainly the freaks from as they were at the time, unfortunately. The freaks from P.T. Barnum's Freak Show. They're also called Wonders at one point, which is another clue. They love the word freak and wonder in the interviews. It's hilarious. So anyway, so 1883, you're going to get a bunch of freaks, a bunch of cowboys, the people from the OK Corral, the people from the Birdcage Theatre. See the Birdcage Theatre. So there's almost definitely a From set in the 1880s that will have the Birdcage Theatre and a train and probably some tents and things, probably derailed. That used to be P.T. Barnum's circus train in some way. And then 1930s, we're going to get like gangsters and starlets, Frank Sinatra, Jean Harlow, Adele Astaire, Lucky Luciano. You'll see a lot of lottery references there, in part a reference to Arnold Rothstein, who fixed the lottery in the 1930s. And in every timeline, these archetypes, they replicate. So there's like a sheriff in every timeline. So the leader of the Untouchables in the 1930s is one of them. That's why it's like, don't touch me, don't touch me. That's a clue to the Untouchables, that sort of thing. And yeah, there's a sheriff in every timeline, basically. So yeah, you can have a look at these. You can see like Danny and Shay, for example, who crashed the car into the pool. That's a clue to Daniel Shay, the famous rebel. There's a rebel archetype in every timeline, but because in the Revolutionary War, everyone was a rebel, they used Daniel because he was a rebel among rebels. That sort of thing. So anyway, that's probably enough about that. And then Relic Seekers, just very quickly. This was what I meant by the Red Book, how you end up with Stephen King. This is incomplete, and I encourage everyone, if this finale comes around, people watch this and they're like, oh, the show's solved. It's not solved. I've got a whole bunch wrong. Like literally, I already know from between my pre-season 3 and my theory now, I already know for a fact that some of the things I said were going to happen were wrong, and I've revised them now. So, to think that even if I do get a lot of this stuff right, that now the show's spoiled, it's a lot of it will be wrong, and certainly we won't know what happens to the characters. There's no way of predicting that. We just sort of know the structure of the world and how it works. But in any case, you can do this solving yourself if you wish, because a lot of these I didn't finish. I know real enigmas and theories. Sorry, I'm not looking at my comments right now, guys. I apologize. I want to sort of finish this and then get chatting to everyone. So you see here, this is how. So you start with Leonardo da Vinci. He's the origin point. So the stolen objects, that magical objects, they arrive in Portugal via the Corte Reals, and then he distributes them to Erasmus, and then they create this secret society, and then they sort of spread across history. And what happens is they the how do I put it? The objects that they hold. So let's say Leonardo da Vinci passes a red book on to Erasmus, who gives it to Thomas More, who some people think had a relationship with Erasmus. And then it goes on, like all the crutch references, are partly a clue to again, these clues rhyme, so a clue to multiple things. But John Dee is Elizabeth I's famous black magician. Anyway, it goes on, and you'll see Victor Hugo, H.G. Wells, a whole bunch of I'm sure you've noticed the wild references. That's one of the references they pass that way. But yeah, ultimately, I think what's going on here is that this red book, it goes all the way up to Stephen King, and then and that's when Julie gets to read it. And what happens is these objects, they influence the writings of the people that receive them to be more similar to Fromland. So if you think about, let's take Alice in Wonderland as an example. We've got a rabbit hole that they go down, and there's a tea party going on down there, right? We saw in season 3 when they go and fetch Jasper. So and then obviously, if you believe my theory, I think it's pretty undeniable, to be honest, but a lot of people don't agree with it. That the characters are representative of tarot cards, and that there's some sort of, they're being played as if they're tarot cards somehow. Or they're metaphorical representations of tarot cards somehow. But ultimately, and there's board games being played, and the whole world's a board game. Well, isn't it interesting, Alice in Wonderland, it's about going down a rabbit hole, chasing a rabbit, and then, you shrink or you grow giants based on a potion that you drink, and then you end up in this world, and there's sentient playing cards, and all the ground is checkered like a board game, and there's sentient chess pieces and board game pieces, and a giant Cheshire cat and a tea party. These things, this is how it works. I hope that kind of makes sense. Like, for example, you'll have Boyd mentioning a hunch. Oh, I just have a hunch, and then Sarah's like, we're going on based on your hunch. I'm like, okay, they've said hunch twice. What's a clue? And then you look at, if you've holistically picked up on who the historical figures are, you'll realize that a great deal of the historical figures mentioned in the Hunchback of Notre Dame are historical figures used in the origin story of From, like Pierre Gringoire, who's an actor, even Triboulet, the hunchbacked court jester of France, was partly what the Hunchback of Notre Dame was named after. And actually, the memoirist Philippe de Comines, who I believe wrote in the Red Diary in the margins, and that's what Julie might be reading, that will give us our flashback to the origin story potentially. Let's see. I think so. He was also Philippe de Comines. His research and his memoirs were, and he's a character as well, I think, in the books. He was used by Victor Hugo. And what's also really interesting is that the Feast of Fools and the Court of Miracles form up a big part of the origin story of Fromland. The Feast of Fools is really important, and the Feast of Fools is a big part of Victor Hugo's story as well. So anyway, so that's probably enough on that. We've done Fromlanders, we've done Relic Seekers, we've done the timeline, we've done season 3 clues. All right. So it's quite late, midnight for me, and I do have work tomorrow. So I probably won't stay on too long, and it's been 2 hours and 17 minutes. I thought this was going to take me 40 minutes. Oh, Taryn, you love to go off on tangents. All right, let's see what the comments are, because you guys did come, and I'll do live chat so I can see them from the beginning. Someone saying, Gothica saying, writing stuff down. That's nice. What's up, guys? Happy to be talking from. I agree with that. Oh, sorry. Look how involved they were with the nursery rhyme and music notes. I'll eat my shoe if you're right about this. That's fair enough, Mish. I hope you film it and let's all watch it if I get to be right about anything. I'll be honest. I think I am right about the origin story in a broad way, no matter what. Whether there's an all ending and an April Fool's thing, I don't know. I'm 70-60% at the moment. Hey Taryn, hey chat. I'm gonna have to start from the beginning. That's cool. You don't want to start in the middle. Although, yeah, at any point it probably doesn't make sense. Taryn, I'm 37 minutes. I thought the calendar was tracking when the portal that lets you in opens. Maybe it's a calendar story Walker Julia made. Well, you never know, Garrett. God, what's going on with my hair today? Sorry. Right, Taryn, I'm 37 minutes late, but what a nice surprise. I miss you and I miss from. Thanks, Mika. Taryn, what do you make of the ads on the walls in the gas station bar? So there's coffee and tobacco. So partly I think that's a clue to Amerigo Vespucci. So I think that might be what the two cars colliding means. I think, so what's really interesting is Amerigo Vespucci supposedly was the first person to ever visit, first European to visit South America. And there's a legendary journey that, historians don't believe happened, where he supposedly went to Colombia and Mexico potentially before returning to Europe. And but so he didn't go to North America, only South America. And it's interesting that the route he took, he would have crossed paths across the Atlantic with John Cabot, who was on his way in 1498 to Newfoundland. So it's possible that they collided. And you'll notice on the wall there it says "We trade," and when you see tobacco and coffee, and basically what you realize is all these products that are being advertised there are products that only existed in South America at the time. And in order for them to form a part of the origin story and be a clue, I think what happens is, and also like one of the objects is clearly South American in origin, and the only way that it could be an object used in John Cabot's time, John Dee's mirror that he uses is clearly a South American sort of Aztec, Mexican, maybe Colombian, Mesoamerican, certainly black obsidian mirror. And I think that John Cabot trades for this mirror and coffee and pineapples and all the things that are exotic that you see hinted at on the show, tobacco and things like that didn't exist in Europe at this time. Potatoes, right? Potatoes didn't exist, and there's potatoes referenced. So I think that it's a clue to Amerigo Vespucci and him trading with John Cabot on his way back to Europe. What else? It's fun to entertain different theories, even if most of them are wrong. It shows your creativity. Taryn, oh my god, I didn't know you're streaming. It's the Severance finale tonight. Remember, I can't handle for anything else. Long. We'll watch this later. My friend, very interested. Well, that's actually why I posted it today. Because if you do it the day before April Fools, people are just going to be like, well, maybe it leaked or something. Well, to be honest, I've been like, you can go back and look at my timestamps on Discord and watch me. Like, I show my working, so I'm really not too worried actually. But I thought I'd put this video out because it allows me to be wrong tomorrow. Because I think actually the chances of John Griffin cameoing on the finale of Severance are very low, and it should have been in tinfoil. But I thought, just in case I'm right, wouldn't it be cool if that was true? So I thought, yeah, why not put it out the day before Severance comes out, just to see. Although I imagine some bloggers have probably got hold of it already or something. So anyway, the point is, I thought I'd put it out now to give myself a bit more of a buffer. Although it's possible I'll do another live the day before, in case I've learned anything else. I've sort of been in a rush to try and, like, I've watched so many videos the last few days, and I've got a deadline coming up, and I've sort of fallen a little bit behind. But I will probably the day before April Fools go live and say if there's anything I've discovered since. Okay, let me keep going. Hi, Taryn, dropping in to show support to the Fromley. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Always good to chat with you. Peace, brother, from All Ending Gang from Real Enigmas and Theories. Thank you, Real. You got 2 streams going at once. Oh, was Real streaming as well? Can't stay, brother. I'm about to go live myself. Please come through if you can. No, I'm going to sleep. Yeah, my life has been crazy busy lately, to be honest. I basically set aside maybe like a week and a half. I did get my word count done every day, to be fair, but I set some of my other stuff that I've had to put aside to do this. So now I've set it in stone. I'm kind of just going to leave it and see what happens on April 1st. But maybe the day before, if I pick, I'm still going to watch interviews if they come out. Doug Hughes does interviews with people, and he's still dropping clues left and right. So maybe I'll watch those and pick up on something and do a live and just briefly mention it. But now I'm really locking it in. This is sort of my final answer. I think after this, I'm done theorizing. It's quite time consuming, and it's so far it's not been particularly rewarding. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I've had so much fun. I feel really privileged actually to be able to watch from and theorize about it. I've never enjoyed a show as much as I have as From, and it's almost like it was a show that was designed for everything I love, to be honest. So it's wonderful. But I think whether I'm right or wrong, that will sort of be it. No more super in-depth stuff at the moment. I think I may I may sort of, still jump on YouTube every now and again. But in terms of like mega Reddit posts and like mega posts theorizing about things, I think I'm going to hang up my my cape, as it were. Yeah. So let's see. Any more comments? Have you been? What is this April thing? You'll have to go back to the start and rewatch it. I love your theories. You have to. Yeah. Okay. Let me just have a quick look to see if there's anything else that I want to mention. Right, 15 people watching. Okay. Well, thanks very much, guys, for watching. I will end the stream now. Appreciate everyone. And yeah, it's been really fun. I will now be counting down to April Fools, and I'll probably wake up in the morning, check my so I own season 3 on Amazon, I think, or maybe I've only bought season 2 in HD. Anyway, I would like to try and watch it in HD on my TV. So I'm going to go and see if they've swapped out the episodes on April 1st. Pull out all my hair when they haven't. I don't know if it's going to be midnight on April 1st or right in the evening, or just a cryptic tweet saying that something's coming, or nothing at all. And maybe it's all season 4. And I'm really wrong about all the time travel stuff. Because really, technically, a lot of this still works with reincarnation and what happened at the end of season 3. What would change is Tabitha's Eloise and Jada's Thomas. But outside of that, actually, pretty much everything else is still within the realm of possibility. But if I'm wrong about April 1st, I'm wrong about all of this stuff, and I bet it, then what's the point in continuing if I'm really bad at it? So yeah, I really appreciate the TV show, and I think what's really important, if you're watching this, let's say I'm right. Let's say I'm right, and this gets shared around a little bit because you can watch it and see how, on the 21st, I was making predictions, and maybe something happens on April 1st, and I'm sort of half right, let's say. If I can spread one message, it would be this, which is From is a word of mouth show. And it's pretty clear from, if I am right, that they're very focused on word of mouth and viral marketing and that sort of thing. And it will only continue and grow if we try and spread the message and get our friends and family to watch it. Believe it or not, I have not been able to convert a single person to watch From, like literally not a single person. I have no one to talk about From with in my real life, other than my family, who all think I'm mildly, may have slightly lost it when it comes to From. They all think it's option 3, shall we say. So yeah, I might as well plug my book since I just did a 2.5-hour video. So first I will plug The Novice. This is, the American cover is slightly different, but it's pretty much the same. The Novice is described as Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings meets Pokemon. So if that sounds cool to you, then check it out. It's actually, although it is teen fiction and older, believe it or not, it's the majority of its fans are adults. And when I wrote it, I didn't write it for teens. It just got categorized that way. Next is The Chosen. This is also young adult, but again, I didn't really write it for teenagers. My editors edited it for teenagers, but I didn't write it for teenagers. And this is basically Yellow Jackets meets Lost meets what I think From is going to become, sort of. Yeah, that's The Chosen. Again, it's a trilogy. The Summoner series is a trilogy plus a companion guide plus a prequel. The Chosen's a trilogy. And then this is my latest book, Dragon Rider. It's basically Aragon for adults is how some people describe it, or potentially it's like House of a Dragon. Yeah, it's probably most comparable to House of a Dragon because it's quite political and factions warring and that sort of thing. And I am a New York Times bestselling author and a Sunday Times bestselling author. I'm in 17 languages around the world. I've sold millions of copies of my books. And I would love it if my love of From helped a couple more people discover my books. So I thought, why not plug them? So yeah, there you go. So that's it then. Yeah, that was way longer than I thought it would be. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. I will now add this to the end of my Reddit post to lock it in. And maybe people won't be quite so mean if they see I'm a real person with a real face. And yeah, appreciate you all. I'll be counting down the days to April 1st, and I will be filming my reaction if there is something. And I will be probably upload a video of me pretending to eat a crow on April 2nd if I'm wrong. Because, you know, I've annoyed a lot of people being like, come on, you know, look at these clues. I'm just like, quiet you don't, you know, you're just crazy. You know, so, you know, it would be my apology to them for wasting their time as well. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Take it easy and goodbye.